Be advised that this show is not for the faint of heart, easily offended, or children of any age. The opinions and information expressed in this podcast are intended for entertainment purposes only. Deviant Robot provides no guarantee as to the accuracy, completeness, currentness, or validity of this content. Like many things in life, don't take it too seriously and stop using if irritation develops.
Hello, everybody. Lovely to see you. I hope everybody has the fantastic, fabulous Friday feeling going on today. I'm William Owen, and today on Inspire Reflection Live, I'm joined by the fabulous Joe. Oh, I got the right way around. That's awesome. Hey, Joe.
Hi.
Joe's hungover, everybody, so please bully him in chat. Just be aware of that. Also joined by the magnificent Reid from Cordial Curiosity.
Hello, what's up? Glad to be here.
Thanks, Anthony. Appreciate that. And the ever charming Anthony Magnabosco. Last but by no means least.
Hello. Good to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for coming, guys. I really appreciate this. It's going to be a fun one. So this is actually a topic that I've wanted to cover since I started the channel, actually, because I think it's fair to say that a lot of people, when they get into street epistemology, they get into it after seeing it being performed live. Hey, juggling lessons. Yes, also good job on the first, buddy. They get into it after seeing like YouTube videos and you guys going out and doing all street interviews with real people in public. And whilst that's not necessarily the only place that you should be doing SE, I think it's definitely an exciting place to do SE and help grow the SE community. And so I guess today we want to talk about a little bit about, like, you know, how we got into that, how you guys do that, like, I guess address the concerns people might have for it. And yeah, generally talk about tech as well as like strategies and just all kinds of things. So we're going to deep dive in on like doing SE live in the street today. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So I guess my first question, Anthony, a great place to start would be, what was your first street interview like? Your first, the one you would consider to be SE?
Oh, okay. So that's okay. That my first interviews weren't SE. I was just sort of antagonizing religious people, I think, with my camera. When I first went out, my first SE conversation, it may have been on the university when I started, the first time I went to the local university, and I started, probably had my whiteboard at the time. I probably had a timer, if I'm not mistaken. These are things that you don't need to have, by the way. But I think it went pretty good. I mean, I had people come back for repeat interviews even back then, even though it wasn't like the best ideal conversation or the best
Right.
like an ideal SE talk. It seemed to go pretty well. So, but nothing really stands out. I honestly don't like. I'm trying to think like what would I point to say that was my first SE talk. I'm not exactly sure. I could
Right,
really
that's
even
a good
put a
question.
finger on it, to be honest, because I didn't really know what I was doing the first time. Maybe the first year I went out, I wasn't quite sure this nebulous thing called street epistemology. I'd read the book, but there weren't a lot of video examples, and
Right.
we were just kind of stumbling through the dark.
Yeah. How about yourself, Reid? What was your first ever out in the wild expedition like?
I first went to USC. There was a festival of books there, and I was volunteering for Atheist United at the time, and we had a really nice booth in a really nice location. So we just set up a little table there with the sign, "What do you believe and why?" I think we had one little microphone and some GoPros, and it worked out okay.
Nice. Well, that was the genesis of the table.
Yes.
Table guy.
Awesome.
There was a time where he invited me out there. Maybe it was about a year when he was doing SE, and then I was in Los Angeles, and I went to his setup. So I sat down and did it, but I also brought my standing equipment, And there was a moment, I don't know if you remember this, Reid, but I was sitting down doing SE, and then you were standing with my whiteboard and my GoPro and trying to flag down people. And he was so uncomfortable doing it. I thought I could tell he was pretty uncomfortable flagging people down.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get. That's something I definitely noted down as like talking about the sit down versus stand up. There feels like there's a huge schism in the community, and I think it's going to create some beautiful alternate church of a street epistemology. But yeah, I'm a one true way. I'm with the school of Anthony. I'm afraid standing up seems like the right way to do about it, but I could be converted. Joe, thanks for joining us, bud. As always, you're not only are you hungover, but importantly, you're thinking about going out and trying to do this, right? So you and I are pretty much in a similar space, right? We're kind of keen to get out there and do that.
For sure. The question I had quickly about the early days of the setup is, I live in a town where the municipality sort of likes to take control of more or less everything. Even buskers here have to get express permission from the municipality and all that sort of thing. And I'm curious, in those early days on a university campus or whatever, you were already getting consent from the people running the campus, or you just went there of your own volition? And
in
if
every
you don't mind
instance,
disclosing that?
I think that's a great question. It's a really important one. No, I just went out and did it. I didn't ask for permission. I figured if I'm going to hit a barrier, I'll hit it, and they'll let me know, and I'll explain what I'm doing, and then try to figure out a workaround. So, no, I didn't really like going out in public, like in front of the Alamo. Didn't really hit any issues because there's people out there all the time.
Yeah,
It was the
in a space
universities.
like that.
It was the universities where, there's students there, and there's adult instructors, and they're on the lookout for troublemakers, I think. So there were some run-ins, but it kind of ran the gamut. There were some places where I never encountered any issues whatsoever, and other places where almost on a weekly basis, there was somebody submitting a complaint, or a teacher coming up to me, or somebody from the police, or even campus security coming up to ask what I was doing.
Right.
So this brilliantly leads to the first topic, really, which is location. What makes for a good location? What kind of things would you avoid in a location? And I guess permission and consent is definitely kind of related to that. So I don't know what the laws in the US are like, but I know for a fact if in the UK, if you are on private property, technically the owner of that property owns the rights to any media you produce on that property, unless you have express consent to be there. So that's one thing to consider. So, for example, people go in the UK to National Trust locations, big sort of public parks, but they're owned by this National Trust organization, and therefore that National Trust organization technically owns the copyright to any footage you record there. So there are those kind of weird considerations in terms of like ownership of the materials and like that kind of thing. Have you ever encountered any issues as regards to that? And have you ever had any sort of recourse to address it?
I intentionally sought out public places from the very beginning: bus stops, tourist locations, public universities, and public parks. I never went to a private business because I figured I would immediately, somebody would immediately have an issue with it. So I just ruled that out. But I've seen people go to malls and stand out in front of the mall and do SE interviews. So, they probably got, I would imagine if they stuck with it more than 2 or 3 days, they probably would get kicked out. So you could probably do that for a little bit, but at some point, a private place is going to give you some problem. And I've never had anybody say, we own your content or anything like that. That's never come up.
Yeah, maybe it's just a strange thing. I researched free speech laws before going out a lot.
Good
really,
for Diamond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have any tips, Diamond, that you could share with us? Because that would be great. Like, it can be a tricky area. Sort of copyright is definitely one component of it, but then also, if you're on a private land, you can always be trespassed. You can be asked to be moved on. You could be shuffled off. Is that anything that's ever given you pause for thought, Reid? Have you ever had any concerns over issues like that?
I usually go to a public park, Runyon Canyon. That's my probably favorite spot besides UCLA. And I have been asked to leave a few times there. And being in Los Angeles, having more and more film equipment as I've been growing my setup, it gets a little on the line. So I've been asked to leave a few times there, but usually I'm fine.
It's the footprint. The footprint catches people's attention. That's why I like the standing part. Because when Reid goes out, I've been with him. He hauls a cart. He has a cart with tables and water and all this shit. And I just go out with my backpack and a couple of my cameras and whatever. So I'm mobile, and I think that's less threatening for people that administer those locations. Like if you're taking up a lot of space and you're causing a ruckus, I think there's more of an opportunity for them to be a little bit more concerned. But if it's one person out there and they're only out there for a couple of hours and it's a small footprint, I think that probably, there's his setup. Yeah.
That's so awesome.
Try wheeling that up and down the hills of Los Angeles.
That's not nearly all of it either.
90-degree weather.
Yeah, but it converts into that. Yeah.
That's some very efficient packing. I like that.
We'll definitely get into some more of the tech side, but I'm sure you've got like some power and laptops and some other bits and bobs that go in on that as well.
There's something to be said though. Well, I don't know if you have like a pat order that you want to go into, but there's something to be said for Reid's setup. Like that looks a lot less sketchy than some dude standing out on the corner of the camera. This looks established. It looks safe. It looks professional.
Yeah.
And there's pros and cons with that too. Like
100%.
For myself, I might get a more relaxed conversation partner because it's just a dude with a camera, So there's trade-offs.
It definitely looks like a legitimate thing, and I wanted to touch on legitimate. Oh well, it obviously, we fantastic photo. Look at that.
Nice dollies there. Awesome.
You just add the juggling lessons in there, and all of a sudden, it just adds up the cool appeal. So yeah, look, I think that's definitely one thing is the amount of equipment. I think there's also a consideration where if you're looking like you're doing something professional, then all of a sudden you're required to be, because you're operating in a professional context, you might need insurance and you might need to be better protected from your in terms of consent and permissions to be on the property. So I think that's, Reid, is that what you were touching on earlier, saying that you're sort of, the amount of equipment is sort of verging on the kind of professional filming sort of setup?
Yeah, the line is like if you have a tripod, it starts to get crossing the line. But I have a cart and I have a little GoPro, so I don't know. I don't think it qualifies.
Yeah, I think from a legal perspective, at least in the United States, it's my understanding. Reid might know more about this than me, but if you're monetizing your content, or you're gathering content for a documentary or a movie, then I think it elevates the bar. And now you might have to get more permission or actually get a waiver from the people that you're interviewing. Whereas for myself, I was recording it, putting it on my YouTube channel and not monetizing it. Now I do now, but back in the day, I wasn't monetizing it. So I think there might be a lower threshold in that regard.
Yeah, take the clipboard away, and you're no different to a tourist, and just just doing some random bits of personal filming. So yeah, I definitely get the yeah, that looks like it's less for profit, less professional in the sense of, you know, professional filming context. And I think, yeah, as a result, maybe it's easier. I definitely say if anybody's starting out down this road, I guess that the answer would be, well, the advice would be start simple. Definitely start simple. And as Diamond Discourse said in the chat, like, you know, definitely check the laws in your area, find out what you can and can't do and where you can and can't film, because you don't want to go out there and sort of jump in the deep end, as it were, camera in hand, clipboard in hand, and then just have a miserable experience because you're being shouted at by police officers or ushered off property by somebody. That would be definitely always worth checking for sure. Also, by the way, Diamond, I think the advice said, I just want to point out, Diamond said sidewalks are protected in the US, so not many indoors, unfortunately. So sidewalks, so you can't film on the sidewalk specifically? Is that what you meant there, Diamond?
I think he's saying you can go on the sidewalks, but there's not sidewalks indoors. I think he's making a joke there at the end.
I gotcha.
But it's hard to tell with Diamond's humor.
I think the advice to get out there, though, and give it a crack, sort of ask for forgiveness before permission.
Yeah, that would be my advice. Just go out there. Yeah, just do it. See what the boundaries are. See what kind of pushback you get, and then like negotiate a little bit. Like, would it be okay if I stood over here? How, what do you think about that camera? Like, try to work with them if they're willing to.
And maybe just to start with, just being in a public space and take any of that concern away. If it's a genuine public space, and even if it's not, so I don't. Again, the States may be different, but in the UK, there are definitely places that look like public spaces that are absolutely not public spaces, and it's not obvious between where the public space is and where the private land begins. But if you've at least got the recourse to be able to say, look, this looks like I just assumed this was a public space and therefore I should be here. I think that's a good enough start, and then you don't have to worry about a lot of this stuff. But if you are going to move into universities or like locations like malls and things, then I definitely think it's probably worth finding out if you need to film, if you need permissions or who you might seek permission from. It will just take that concern away a little bit.
But to touch on what my point was, is that you're at least getting out there and having the conversations, because initially I think it's more important to be getting there and having the practice of the conversations than having the perfect setup and the perfect location. At least with taking those barriers away from yourself, you're out there speaking to people and you're building the technique for yourself and all that sort of stuff. So it's important to touch on.
It's important to get out there. However, I think it's really important to record something, even if it's just the audio.
For sure.
If anything, just to protect yourself, because there have been a few instances where I was accused of saying things. Like one time I was at the park and the cops showed up and they said, we're getting reports that you're out here asking people about death. I had no idea what they were talking about, but I'm guessing somebody just happened to be walking by as some comment related to that topic caught the attention, and that was enough to taint it. So, but then there was another time where there's one university that I'm not allowed to go on because somebody complained that I said something inappropriate. And I was like, well, what did they say that I said? And they wouldn't tell me. But of course, I had recordings of everything that I did that day. So it's really useful. Like, you never know what kind of response you're going to get, because people will assume the worst intentions of why you're out there. And it's really important to protect yourself. So if you can, at the very least, just have your audio going if you can legally do that in your area.
That's a really good point. And I don't think if you're in a public space, and this is somewhere I was thinking of touching on later, but we can jump in right now, because not only is there obviously consent in regards to filming the location, but you also potentially got to consider consent to film the person. You've got to consider consent to then ask them if it's okay to upload that video. So there's and even consent for the conversation and all this other good stuff. So there's lots of checking in with the individual. But technically in the UK, for example, I don't think consent would be necessary to film the person. If they're in a public space, then you are able to film them without their explicit consent. In which case, I would say err on the side of caution. And if you're going to engage in an interaction, be filming it from the beginning, so that in case anything happens, then you've got a record of what happened. And even if they say later that they'd rather you don't upload the video, you've at least got that record to listen back to and like as a self-reference. And I think that would be incredibly useful. Is the law similar in the US, or is consent much more an opt-in thing in the US for filming?
I'm not sure. It's either one-party consent or two-party consent. depending on the state, and there might be local laws as well, depending on where you are. But it's very obvious I have a camera, and I always ask for consent anyway.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely worth asking them, even if it's not a legal requirement.
Yeah. And by the way, it might be helpful also to point out all the cameras that you have, because there was one instance where I was interviewing this lady, wonderful conversation. Do you remember this, Reid? And she messaged me a week later or something and said, "Take it down. I had no idea that you had another camera above your head pointing down at me. I knew that you were filming me, from your chest cam, but I had no idea that you had that camera up there." And,
Right.
so maybe that was an extreme example, but it probably could be a bad idea to say, like, just so you know, I've got like 3 cameras around. There's one over there, here. Are you cool with that? And that way they know that maybe it's a bigger production than they expected it to be. So it's about setting expectations and getting consent. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think Joe and I both trying to share the same comment from Juggling. Yeah, in France, you have no permissions to film people in public without specific permission. Source Tom Scott. Wow. Yeah, thank you. That's awesome. So yeah, different countries, definitely very vastly different laws. So do check in your local area for what you can and can't film, but even in public spaces. In the UK, I know for a fact you can film without consent explicitly being given, and therefore you've got that protection. But if not, then obviously you need to adhere to the local laws. But yeah, I like that. Pointing out the specific equipment you've got definitely is useful. And not anything else, but sorry, go ahead, Joe.
Well, it also feels a little bit more respectful to ask the person for consent anyway. Because I've seen even in both Reid and Anthony's videos, people have such a different reaction to the question for consent too. Some people are like, well, of course, everybody's recording everything everywhere, but other people are like, oh yeah, so it personalizes it, it's respectful, and also can protect you if anyone later said, oh, I didn't say that they could do this. So I think it's just a good thing to do in general when at the start of
I think it definitely usefully makes them feel like they're in control in a way that they would be really useful for building up rapport.
On that point, I've had a few it's surprising how few people requested this, but a very few people themselves recorded it. They were all, I could probably count on one hand where somebody said, "Do you mind if I pull out my phone and capture the audio, record this as well?" It's hardly ever happened. But my recommendation would be, like, be prepared for people to suggest that. And you might even want to encourage it. And that I think could help build some trust. Like, I'm not going to misrepresent you. We'll have 2 copies here. That could help build trust and kind of put you both on a fair playing field too.
Yeah, there are so many bad actors out there that are doing sort of shock, documentary filming of getting sound bites for people. I guess people are on their guard for not wanting to be misrepresented in a video that comes out later on. So yeah, it totally makes sense. I like that idea a lot. Angling cameras so that they aren't there aren't people in the background minimizes the issue too. Yes, background characters. I mean, yeah, I think that's another thing in terms of location, like which we probably could circle back to. But what kind of makes a good location specifically? I mean, I would say a minimum number of background characters would probably be one criteria.
A minimum, but you want some, like. So I have always thought, like, it's kind of neat to see people walking by in the background, and it kind of keeps it entertaining for the viewers. At least that's my hypothesis. So if sometimes there's something that's interesting that goes by in the background, or a person on a skateboard that I'll cut to, or like, I think that's kind of neat where there's a little bit of activity. And I think it helps conversation partners feel a little bit safer if they know there's other people around. Like, think about it. If it's just you and them on a quiet trail with nobody else around, that could be a little unnerving for people. So I think you want that just enough people walking by where it's safe, but not too many people where it's too noisy and then it becomes a distraction.
Yeah, definitely. I think it makes it feel like it's a real interaction as well, not just a not just a staged interview, as it were.
Right.
That was the point I was going to make. It makes it seem more organic as it does. It's a real public space, and there are people wandering by, and this is just one that happens.
And there's the natural natural interruptions. Somebody wheels a cart by, or something tips over and falls, or our friend walks up to say hello. Like that, I just love that there's a human charm to that I'd love capturing if you can.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And you don't usually get that in a sit down location, because I think in a sit down they're like, they don't want to interrupt you, but when you're standing, it's a little bit more fluid.
Yeah. How about you, Reid? How do you feel about, like, what kind of things shout out good location to you?
Yeah, it's like a medium amount of foot traffic, also quiet, not near a road, really, and just where people have time to talk, which is at parks or on college campuses are the best places, I think.
Right. Yeah, background noise is definitely a factor, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get triggered by background noise so much, especially as I'm getting older. I notice it more and more. Like I can't watch a show now without the captions being on because there might be some noise in the background or whatever. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough not to get frustrated because at least for myself, when I'm recording, I'm thinking, what am I capturing here for other people to watch? And I just like look at how much time we spent prior to this interview getting our mic set up and testing everything out.
Wow.
It's sort of the same. Yeah. It's sort of the same thing. Like, you want it to be a good example and not detract from what it is you're trying to show. And then you have all these variables that are out there. But if you're going to be in public, it comes with the terror. That's the street part,
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I think that's you're right. I mean that it isn't the street part, right? so there's a big thing in the SE community, with the idea that street is supposed to signify non-academic street epistemology, and yet the most prescient examples of street epistemology in the wild are actually conducted on the metaphorical street in the public. So people obviously do think that's the street part. But yeah, I think I like the idea of it being a lively space because I think also it makes people probably, I'm assuming, would make people feel less trapped. There are other people around. It's not just you, this strange guy with a clipboard sort of asking weird questions and probing your sort of inner belief systems. I think doing it slightly out in the open so that people feel at least that there are other people around them would definitely add to the safety feeling of your conversation partner. But yeah, noise is definitely a key factor. Other than noise, is there anything specifically that you would seek to avoid? I think we mentioned roads, but I think that was just a sort of related to noise. Is there anything particularly anywhere you've tried to go and it's just been a total bad idea?
I mean, weather is a factor.
Right.
You pay attention. Like if you are going to a university, pay attention to what's happening at the university because it might be finals week and everyone's focused on their finals and they're tense about that stuff. So maybe just pay a little bit more attention to like who is there around you and what they're there for and what might be occupying them could be something to consider.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I can imagine someone wanted to go to like a protest, and that might be like, I know Nathan from Abstract Activist did a lot in Portland at some point, and he wasn't there like on the front lines of like in between two really loud sets of people. But if you can grab someone and go to like a quiet area, that might be interesting. But
yeah,
don't be like on the front line of a protest for sure.
Yeah. An interesting place to ask questions, but also carries unique concerns, I would imagine, as well as technical challenges in terms of filming and getting out.
I think it's also tough when let's say you're interviewing somebody and then their friends walk by and then they want to stop and listen that type of thing. So observers make me nervous when they're there. Like I don't mind streaming the audio to a Discord where there's 50 people listening or the people that will watch the replay. But if there's 3 or 4 people standing around, like I get nervous in that situation, and I think that would probably make my conversation partner a little bit nervous, or at the very least more guarded, because now they have their friends listening to what they're saying, and I wonder if it compromises their own honesty in the interaction. So if you can, I would say try to do a one-on-one. It's so much harder with 2-on-1, 3-on-1, or observers.
Yeah, I totally would recognize that. I think I've seen what happens, in your videos when you're doing your one-to-one conversation and then somebody else comes along or is like their friend joins them. Now all of a sudden you're kind of having to bring this other person up to speed whilst maintaining a conversation with this other person. Right. And then of course you're totally, absolutely. This person's going to be slightly different now. For
sure. You're playing catch up because you're like, by the way, we're recording and I'm doing this thing called SE and you're already 10 minutes into the conversation with the other person. So it kind of throws it off. Yeah.
But I think also there's something like important about the stranger dynamic, actually. Like there's a weird, I know in a previous, we spoke about this in our interview, but there's I know you did street interviews, you did interviews or conversations in taxi cabs as a sort of a prelude to SE. I heard you mention this, and it's something that sort of echoes with myself. And I think there's something actually uniquely freeing about having a conversation with a total stranger who you are unlikely to ever see again. Because in some ways you can actually be more honest with that person than you might be around with your family and your friends and you know, people you hang out with, or in your peer group, or even just in your local community. You can say something to a stranger that it's because you're not, it's a disposable thing. And I think that actually that makes the conversation much more impactful. So yeah, I definitely would avoid situations where if you can, there are groups of people hanging out. How about you, Reid? Have you ever had a successful conversation with more than one person that you felt was still effective?
A few times, I think so. Yeah, there were two women I talked to about gender. That was a fun one. They kind of bounced off each other's. They disagreed a little bit, but I tried to keep it on topic, and it seemed to work out okay.
Excellent. There's a slight air of, you know, it was a successful conversation because you managed to ruin a beautiful friendship, but then they went home and just argued. But yeah, I think that's cool. So I think in general, like, locations definitely is a really important thing to think about before you go out there. Not least of all because you don't want to have a miserable time. I think the weather is a great thing to think about, that you might, you know, might let escape you. You don't want it to be too cold or miserable, or certainly don't want it to be raining in terms of your equipment. But also, you don't want your conversation partners to be thinking about, like, oh my god, I'm freezing, I don't want to, I'm getting wet here, I don't want to, you know, stick around. So yeah, be mindful of that. And I know you guys often are doing this in the heat, right? So you always carry the ice water and the bottled water, which is a great way to get people to interact. Yeah, that's awesome. So I guess that's using the weather to your advantage. Free umbrellas maybe in the UK might be a useful useful tactic. Joe, when you're thinking about going out, where is there anywhere particular you think you might give it a go? Is it how's this reflected on your sort of choices of location to kick off?
Yeah, I mean, given the town that I live in, the main concern would be that I'm almost certain the first employee of the municipality that walked by would be like, "What are you doing? Stop this!" And so, I think consent in my particular area will be something that I'll have to tackle first. But then after that, there's a spot that's perfect for it. It's got loads of foot traffic, but there's a river right next by, and it's quite a fast running river, so that's going to cause a lot of audio concerns, right? Of the rushing water. So yeah, it's good because it's made me consider all these things. But yeah, I think I also live in a town that's just the perfect space for this whole foot traffic essay thing, because it's a extremely popular international destination. So each person walking by will almost be guaranteed to be from a different country, and so there'll just be this really widely varying pool of minds to access. So I'm excited to try it out. But location wise, yeah, the noise of the river is one that's definitely going to play into this particular spot I was thinking of, and then consent from the municipality will be.
The whole place is going to need a new slogan. It's going to be "Came for the skiing, stayed for the epistemological exploration." This is going to be great. I like it. Excellent.
Yeah, exactly.
I think there was I think in terms of location, I had a thought there, but it just ran out of my head just immediately. I don't know why I did that, but anyway, we can move on. It's all good. This kind of leads us into equipment. We've kind of touched on equipment a little bit, but I think equipment, especially if you want to film these interactions, which of course is absolutely not necessary. You going out and having the conversations is actually the important part. But I think if you wanted to film these and create a YouTube channel, as we said at the beginning, it's a great way to, help people see what you're doing and sort of get a sense of what street epistemology is. And actually, one of the things I think is really charming is that you can submit your video to be reviewed by other people on the SE Review Show, and I think that's a really fantastic way of getting great feedback, as well as sort of seeing how you've grown over time. And I guess that's one thing I did want to touch on, which is like how do you I know we've spoken before about this, but like the sense of like progress and embarrassment about your early videos, for example, and like I think everybody has this, right? Nobody's ever had a channel that's lasted for more than a week that wasn't slightly embarrassed about the stuff they put up at the beginning. So I guess one thing is like, how do you overcome that fear a little bit of like not being able to get it right and then being embarrassed about what you do? Should people post more liberally and then be critical later, or do you think people should wait until they've really nailed it before they start posting their videos?
I remember having maybe a few dozen videos I posted as unlisted on my personal YouTube channel and posting them to the Facebook group and getting feedback there. So feel free to do that as long as you feel comfortable. And then you'll have a backlog of stuff of your best, and you can post some of that as your first videos.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And then you can share it with friends and family and people and see what they think. And yeah, definitely.
I never really struggled with that. Like, I just figured, I might have 10 conversations and then pick the 2 that I thought were the best representation of SE and were interesting in some way and maybe unique to what I've uploaded before. So like, I never uploaded anything that I wasn't comfortable to a certain degree. Like, if I was 75% comfortable or higher, then I would upload it. That's sort of my barometer. So like, I never really worried too much about it. There were sometimes the topic, or maybe I knew that I asked a question or did something in the interview that I knew would be controversial or something. But I would be like, well, I guess I'm always looking at it from the observer. And I was thinking, okay, there's going to probably be people who are interested in SE who will see this and they'll find value in it. So I was just reminding myself, like, yeah, even though it's not good, people could still benefit from this. And that got me comfortable and over the hump to just like, okay, I'm putting it up there. And I guess you could always take it down. There may be a couple instances where I've took a video down afterwards, but yeah, for the most part, I didn't really struggle with that decision too much.
Yeah, that's cool. I think I think some people do. I think people are wait for perfect before they're going to start posting videos. They want it to be perfect, and I think that there is no such thing as a perfect conversation. I think a perfect conversation is just one that you enjoyed. Like what I think we talked about, like a test of SE is like whether the person would be willing to have another conversation with you. I think if that litmus test is passed, then I think it's a great conversation. And I think no matter how badly you delivered like the methodology of SE or how badly you sort of approached the conversation or whatever else went wrong, if it was enjoyable enough that that person would be willing to do this again, and I'm sure it's good enough to go out there and be uploaded. So yeah, I think that's a good test.
Reid's advice for the unlisted video is a really good way too, because you've gone through the process of the production and you can do the editing and stuff afterwards and all the rest of it. And if it's not this idea of a finished product, so to speak, of something that you want to post, it's at least on there and you can share it with a select audience and get feedback in that way. And that, I think that's a great first step. And then the beauty of that too is that you can later change that unlisted to make it more public if you wanted to. And so yeah, it's a really good idea for sure.
It speaks as well to this problem that you're going to see it through a rather strange lens. Like you can only see content that you're in through this weird perspective that nobody else actually shares. Like you're going to be looking for your own insecurities. You're going to be looking for where you mess something up, and it's going to feel way bigger than it would feel to anybody else. Stutter, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You just everything, or you ask a question in a bad way, and it's going to be so bigger, much bigger to you when you see yourself do that. And so you're going to be so oversensitive to the failures. And I think that showing it to somebody else and saying, look, people you trust, especially, that will actually say, actually, that was a bit ropey, finding those good people to share that with. And I think actually the Discord community is a great place to do that. Like you could privately share it with some people on the Discord community and say, like, what do you think to this? Does this seem like it would be worth publishing? I'm very confident that you're going to get more yeses than you'd expect for that.
Yeah, there's echoes to that with music, like learning to play an instrument. These so-called mistakes you're making, these minor things, you're sitting there going, oh no, that was terrible. And then you speak to the people who were listening to it like, oh, that's incredible, you're doing really well. They don't even know these supposed mistakes that you're making. So
that's a very guitar thing though, isn't it? Because you can be quite fluffy on the guitar sometimes and people just think it's an interesting accent, not that you just missed the whole section.
Well, they don't even recognize that it was off tempo or the point is that these things that you're critiquing yourself on so critically, other people will literally not even notice. So it's 100%. Be kind to yourself, I think.
Yes. Very good. I like that. Be kind to yourself. So let's talk about tech for a bit. So the most important thing I wanted to talk about was audio, because I feel like in many ways people spend a lot of time when they're filming their SE conversations thinking about the filming and not nearly as much about the audio. when ironically it's all about the conversation. And frankly, I think the audio is like the most important part of it. And whilst I think having an exciting video and a nice frame and you know, nice cameras setups and all this good stuff is really key for me personally, I want to be able to hear that conversation. So even if I was just watching a static image with the audio being played over the top in the video because the video was just terrible, I think I could still enjoy that conversation. I could still enjoy the value of that. Whereas if I'm watching some beautifully shot video, but all I'm hearing is wind noise and just like I'm straining to hear what the person's saying, and the levels are all over the place, then I think I would definitely be less interested in listening to that, even if the SE was really good. How do you guys feel about like do you think about video first or audio first when you went out, or did you think about just trying to capture it and seeing what happened? Or
audio was my biggest thought at the time, but that's just because I didn't know anything. So yeah, in hindsight, I think audio should be the priority over the video, but I didn't know that. So I didn't realize how bad the audio was until I really started paying attention to the comments with people basically pleading with me, please get a shotgun mic. Although I never really liked the idea of pointing things at people. So I never did that. But I just bought this little, this is a little microphone. It was $20 or something. And you add it to your GoPro and it improved the quality noticeably. And then I started sending my audio to a guy in Germany who he charged me for it. It was, you know, it cost me money, but it noticeably improved it even more. So once I did those two things, it drastically improved the audio. And that was a huge improvement. And it's not very obtrusive or intrusive to your interlocutor. And Reid's got the sit down setup, so he's got a lot more options as far as microphones, I think, as opposed to a stand-up person. I know that you can clip things on people and all that, but I don't even like that. I feel like I'm already asking my conversation partner so much. I don't want to overburden them with technical stuff.
Yeah. Here's my original first setup, and it was just this blue Yeti mic on a table. But
how young you look.
Yeah. If you touch the table at all, it would be horrible audio. It would sound like So then I decided to put it on this stand. That was a bad idea too. This is not an outdoor.
Every bump on the table, Oh, that's above the table, but it's still
vibrating or connected to the table. Yeah.
But eventually, I got to this setup, and it's been working out amazingly well.
So that's much more like a podcasting or studio setup. You've got two, I think they're Procaster mics, if I'm right, and then like the XLR mics, and you'll have an input somewhere down below the table. That is much more likely. And those shock mounts that you're seeing there, they're great for that table vibration. That will take that right out of those. They're really good, but that you know, in order to do that, you really are going to need a table. There's no way you can use those kinds of mics really practically. You could have them on standing mic stands, like long mic stands, but I think practically it would be a lot. You also need to be quite close to them for the audio to be quite nice, you know, and so people aren't never sure how far or close to go to their microphones and things. So there's a little bit of I guess experience that's useful for those ones. But that's great. Look at that.
Yeah. Now we have headphones as well, even though we're like only 4 feet away from each other. But hearing yourself from a microphone that's right there, it's nice. I like that a lot. Yeah,
that's cool. That's definitely cool. Loving these photos. These are great.
Yeah. Awesome.
So yeah, I guess there's a couple of things to think about then. So there's your audio, and then there's the your partner's audio, and then there's also background noise, right? So those are the three things I think people need to think about mostly. But the thing that I think in general, but I think the thing that ruins all of those things, that makes everything worse, is the wind noise on most microphones. And I said at the beginning of the stream, I really want to promote these things. This is called I'm told it's called a windshield, but I've always known it as a dead cat. They're colloquially known as dead cats, but basically it's a big fluffy sock that you stick on your microphone, and it makes it look ridiculous. It makes it look like a mop, and it's very silly. But what that will do is it will stop that horrible wind sound that you're going to get on your inbuilt camera mic, on your mobile mic, on your like whatever plastic or metal microphone you're using. If you've not got one of these things on and you're outside and the slightest breeze gently blows across the microphone, it will sound like you're in a tornado. And it's horrible, and it completely destroys the ability to hear what's going on. So you can get these things in all kinds of shapes and sizes. You saw Reid had some fluffy stuff stuck to his mics. Every microphone out there is going to have something like this that you can place on it. You can see the foam ones, the foam attachments that you might find for microphones. Those foam ones, they are a lot less designed for the kind of general outdoor purpose wind breaking. So what you really need is a fluffy dead cat on your microphone, and adding that to either a GoPro, you can get them for the Go XLRs, you can get them for not Go XLRs, so you can get them for the DJI Pocket Osmos. You can get them for pretty much every kind of microphone you can get, whether it's a tiny little lavalier mic or whether it's a really great big fat pro mic or shotgun mic. You want to stick one of those on the end of it. Stick one of those on the end of it. I'm losing my mind. You want to stick one of those on the end of it, and that wind noise will just go away completely. And especially when we're doing these things outdoors, I think that's just the number one PSA is do put one of these fluffy things on your microphone. It will massively improve everything.
And you could also turn your body. Like I've learned over the years, like to pay attention. Of course, you're paying attention to them and what they're saying, but you're also paying attention to the position of your camera, where they are in relation to your camera, the distance, because some people get really, really close to you, and many people stand really far away for some reason. So there's a little bit of finagling of the person that you're speaking with so that they're physically in the right spot. And then turning your body so that you're blocking the wind. Or maybe there's sometimes where like I'll raise my jacket because I know the wind's coming from this direction. And even that can help, but
helps, yeah.
You don't learn that stuff until you get into the editing bay and you realize that one moment where they said the thing, they said the amazing thing during the conversation, and it was like it was diluted with a blast of wind, and it's so frustrating.
It is horrible. So yeah, the dead cat will definitely massively help. But yeah, definitely think about where the wind's coming. You really want to avoid the wind at all if you can help it. Like don't be out, but also make sure you put this on even if you don't think it's windy, because firstly the wind suddenly will pick up from nowhere at zero notice, and the other thing is that despite you not feeling it being particularly windy, that doesn't necessarily mean that your microphone's going to not be hearing that wind noise, because they are very sensitive to it, especially some of the cheaper microphones, and indeed some of the more expensive microphones can be very sensitive to it as well.
And on that audio sense, I'm curious, Reid, in your setup that we saw there on the table, or your more recent setup, do you have any kind of noise gates going on, software-wise, or on the little DAC that's there, or how much does the background noise impact your setup, and how much do you do to mitigate it?
I think I only have a limiter on the Zoom mixer I have there on the table, and then I do more post stuff after.
Right.
Yeah,
good to know, because that was something I was considering, like how much of a noise gate or what do I need to have going on. So it's good to know.
So do you find that because you've got the sort of firmer foam heads on the microphones, but do you find that that's enough to kill the wind noise for where you are for the most part, or do you still get the occasional problem?
Yeah, about 95%. It's fine at the time.
Yeah, that's cool. Also, you kind of both sat in a relatively close place, unless the wind is specifically coming from the left to the right of you, I think, or right to left. It's not really gonna. It should be blocked by you being sat there, apart from anything else. Plus, you're a lot closer to those microphones, so that will give you an advantage as well, I'd imagine. So I did want to cover really quickly just this idea, which is this is when people talk about shotgun microphones. This is what we're talking about. It's a microphone that will look something like this. This is just the Rode one. The shotgun microphones are great for just sticking on top of your camera and pointing at something, and they're designed to only pick up audio very much from what they're being pointed at. So in my setup that I'm working on at the moment is I'm using this microphone for my conversation partner. with the idea being that I can point it to a specific direction and just ask my conversation partner, can you just stand here, because that's where the microphone's pointing, and hopefully that will sufficiently pick them up without them having to be worried too much about having to stick expensive electronics on them, or have them be carrying a microphone, or the handheld microphone. I've seen people try to do SE interviews with a handheld mic, and I've commented on this before that I really dislike them, because I think it adds a weird power dynamic to the situation, because you can take that person's ability to speak away unintentionally because you want to say something.
Yeah, you're basically telegraphing that you're in control of this dialogue when you have the microphone. So yeah, I never liked the whole wand thing. I'd much rather have bad audio than use that, even if it improved it.
Yeah. I would agree, actually. That is definitely a really.
But this is a nice option, because they're standing there, you're pointing it at them, and you're capturing that. But
that's it.
Although it's pointing something directly at them the entire time. One little thing that I do, if you notice, like I wear a lot of black shirts, so like I wanted my equipment to blend into my shirt, and I turn off the red blinking light because that's an option. I wanted people to forget that the cameras were there.
Yeah.
So there's a trade-off, like.
And this is definitely a problem with some of the kind of GoPro strapping approaches, is that, it's hard to, if you've got a GoPro strapped to your forehead and one to your chest and then three to, every limb has a different GoPro.
I did that once. I had 3 cameras. I literally had one on my forehead, one on my chest, and one on my whiteboard. And it was an editing nightmare. And I never did it. I did it once. Reid was probably watching live when I did. Yeah. I think I was even had my cell phone. And I was live streaming on Periscope or something. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, but I
too much.
definitely think it can feel intimidating, I'm sure, for the conversation partner, and definitely makes it feel like I think it would make it feel like the filming of this conversation is more important than the conversation itself. And I think that you really want to avoid giving that impression at all costs. So yeah, this is a shotgun mic. It's great for, like, you can put it on a tripod, you can attach it to wherever your camera is, and then ideally you just point it at the person. And again, always stick a dead cat on the end of it, and then you'll be happy days. So that would be a great option for pointing at the conversation partner. And then these are lavalier mics. I always pronounce this weirdly, but lavalier mics. These microphones can be very good for you because they're small and unobtrusive. Lavalier mics are just basically tiny little microphones. And again, this one's only got a foam head on it, but you can even get the dead cat things that you will place on these lavalier mics. They look kind of weird because it looks like you've got a little furry hamster sat on you, but that will really cut the wind out. So you'll still get that horrible wind noise with these things if you're not careful. But they're fairly small, low profile and unobtrusive microphones, and they can actually do a pretty good job of delivering your audio to your recording setup. So maybe a combination of maybe something like this for you, that's slightly closer, a little bit more personal, a little bit more, sort of tunable, and something more general purpose like a shotgun microphone for your conversation partner. Sounds like it would be a really good option for sort of standing street interviews.
It's worth noting too that lav mics are quite often cheap for decent quality. If it's plugged directly into what's recording the audio source, it can be an incredibly affordable option for some semi-decent ones. So
they might pick up heavy breathing and stomach grumblings if you're hungry. So just keep that in mind. I've noticed a few when I'm listening. When I'm editing, I'm listening to every little word excruciatingly and typing up captions and everything. You notice the things that these mics will pick up.
Is that why the Mormons bought you that sandwich that one time? They just wanted to make sure the audio was going to sound okay. We should feed him before.
That may have been it. Videos. That may have been the motivation.
Yeah. One further option I want to point out is this. Oh no, that's not the page I wanted. This one. So this is a new microphone. You can see it's quite pricey, but actually this is a new setup from DJI. There are different options available, but these actually sound fantastic, and I've got these on order. They're supposed to be available right now, but stock is limited at the moment because they're just doing a sort of relatively slow release. By the way, I'm not sponsored. This is totally not a sponsored anything. But these are 2 microphones. They're 2 radio lavalier mics that sort of clip onto your shirt or clip onto your jacket. And there's actually this little thing in the middle is a transmitter, and this entire case is a charging unit. And the idea is basically you can clip one onto your conversation partner, you clip one onto yourself, you have the receiver thing, the part in the middle here. This will basically sit next to your recording device, wherever it is, your primary recording device, and it will just plug in, and they just automatically just start sending all of the audio to the receiver. And what's kind of remarkable about these is the audio quality is really, really nice. I've actually heard quite a few tests of these things before I decided to jump in and buy it. And you can see they've got the fluffy, there we go, the fluffy dead cats for the end of them as well. So this is actually a remarkably nice package. It's quite expensive. This is going to be about £300. I don't know what that is in US. But these are, I think, a really good option. If you're going to be doing this regularly, you might want to think about something like this. My personal idea would actually to be using something like this, but still be using a shotgun microphone for my conversation partner, because you don't want your conversation partner to wander off with the microphone still attached, and then you have to hunt them down again. They're completely wireless, so you don't want to risk that. So I would probably maybe use one of these for myself. That gives me the freedom to move around, and it's kind of low profile. And at the same time, the shotgun mic is going to be pointing at my conversation partner, hopefully, and picking up their audio brilliantly. So yeah, I think that might be a really great option. So I just wanted to point that out. Cool.
I like that.
Yeah, I'm keen to get those tried. So
I did a
that
quick
leads
currency conversion, and it's like 350 to 360 USD for all those people
Gotcha.
out there wondering. But yeah, it's a bit of cost up front, but
it's certainly a bit of a cost up front. Yeah, but
There's also Rode wireless go-tos are very similar to that as well.
Yeah.
Really
Their pricing I don't think is that much different, and these are an order of magnitude better than the Rode Go 2s. And I've got the Rode Go 1s, and I thought they were very good, and I was nearly going to buy the Rode Go 2s, and I was like, no, these sound massively better. Really big improvement. So I would say definitely go with these if you can. And that charging case also does the synchronizing for you, so you don't have to sync the two units, which is a problem on even the Rode Go 2s. You have to make sure they're properly paired every time you want to use them, and the recording is just so much better. So yeah, I would strongly recommend this as an option if you want to go this route, but definitely not required to start out. And in fact, maybe we should have mentioned this, and we might mention this in this next section when we talk about cameras, but there's nothing wrong with starting out with just using your mobile and recording a conversation. There are definitely ways you can go about just using your mobile phone, set it up in a neutral place, be relatively close to it, and you could probably have a perfectly functional video just using your mobile phone. It's a great way to get started without having to buy any extra equipment. And so all of this is just adding to the quality. Ideally,
I might ask just intuition. I get the feeling that it also, say you had this setup that had the two labs. I get the intuition that asking to put a lab mic on your conversation partner might be really intimidating, and it's something that I personally wouldn't try to do. I don't know how Anthony or Reid feel about that, but I feel like that might be.
Idea.
Yeah, I don't like the idea at all. Okay, cool.
You can offer it as an option. Like, I've got some microphones if you want to throw one on, but it's no big deal. And then then you could be grateful if they do, but it's not the end of the world if they don't.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I share the intuition, and I think that even less so than Reid's setup, like the sitting down at the table, that's sort of, they're taking themselves there and they're sitting in front of it. They can see it there. It's something, to me, my intuition tells me, is a little more intimidating about actually clipping something to that person. So
yeah, I wanted to get to that in a moment, but yeah, I definitely feel like there's such a different dynamic there, and I don't know whether that's necessarily a bad thing, but I think it's useful to be aware of the difference of the dynamic. I mean, again, I think it's the thing that we were losing when if we were strapping more GoPros to ourselves and fussing around cameras and trying to get everything recorded, making the priority the recording equipment, but also making the presence of the recording equipment even more intrusive on the actual conversation. I think with Reid setup, you can't not know what you're doing, right? People are clearly sitting down in front of a microphone. They're very aware they're being recorded and filmed. So there's I guess more sort of obvious consent resolution there. But at the same time, maybe that's going to impact the way they respond. But I don't necessarily know if that impacts it negatively or not. Like it might make them more consciously trying to answer honestly, perhaps, or I'm not sure. What do you think, Reid? Either
you're muted.
Trying to find my window. Yeah, there is added pressure because people aren't usually used to being on camera. And there's sometimes most of the time also live stream, and that might be an additional pressure. So
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, I think there's a sense of a more formal interview as well. Like they're sort of they're suddenly they were happily walking through the street. The next thing they found themselves in this little micro recording studio with headphones and microphones pointing at them, and that intimidation factor alone, it's got to be distracting for them, maybe. But then also maybe I do wonder whether or not they might feel more compelled to be honest, perhaps. Maybe because it feels like a more formal setting.
I think it's going to be very individual to the person. Some people there might even be a sense of theater. It might bring them out of their shell even more to have that sort of attention and focus and the rest of it. So person to person, I think you're going to get incredibly different responses from that sort of stimuli. But
I think it's all over the place. I've had people tell me after the camera was off that they completely had a different stance than what it was they professed on the camera, because they knew it was being recorded and possibly going on YouTube, and their parents might have seen it or something. So I think the camera can, it's not perfect, but like, I don't know how you get examples of SE to show to people other than asking people to put themselves in an unusual position in order to have the conversation. So it's not optimal. If we need to figure out if we can, that's the challenge, is figuring out how to have more authentic talks and still capturing them in a way where you can be showing people how to do it. That's a big challenge, and I don't know how to cross that.
That's a great question to ask, though, right? Like, you could say to them, like, I'm going to film this conversation. Is that okay? And if they say yes, you could say, if we film this conversation, will that change how you respond? Like, do you feel like that would change your answers to how you would respond in this conversation? If they say that it would or it might, can you say, can we just record it anyway? And if at the end of the video, if you feel like what you said is not something you would want to have represented, I will happily not put it out there. But I would totally understand how it would be so disappointing to get to the end of a conversation and realize you weren't really reaching the person you were speaking to. And that definitely has to be like the priority of all of this, I think, is making sure that the person you're speaking to is really, really present. That would be, I'd never thought of that, but that's such a great question to ask, is would it change your view? If I turn the cameras off now, would it make you more comfortable? And could we have that conversation? If they say it would, you can say, well, can we keep them on but still do it? And then if afterwards you don't want it to go out, maybe that would help address that. That's awesome. So while we're in the tech world, I guess the other side of the equation is obviously filming. And I feel there's been a little revolution going on, or I feel like we're at the cusp of a little revolution in terms of filming this stuff in the realm of these wonderful 360 cameras that are going on at the moment. So this is the GoPro 360, which is a great 360 camera, and these are cameras that have got lenses on both sides of the little device there. So on either side of this device, you're going to be recording both. Basically, you're recording a 360-degree picture all the way around the camera. So you'll be simultaneously, if you've got one of these devices in between you and your conversation partner, you're going to be simultaneously recording yourself and your conversation partner. And later on in the edit, you can choose whether you want to be cutting to your conversation partner or cutting back to you, just like you would if you had separate cameras, but it's all going to be just one camera. But if somebody wanders in from the side, you could cut the camera to the side and show what's going on there and give context to maybe an interruption or something. You've got lots of options here, which, in a normal camera, you've really only got what you're pointing it at. That's the only option you have. So I think for like these street interviews, and especially if you want to have a single camera setup, something like this is really good. I bought the Insta 360 One X2, which is exactly the same kind of concept. It's just basically a different company. But basically, these 360 cameras, I think, are really providing a good option, I think, for street epistemologists. What do you think, guys? Is this something you would consider using?
Yeah, I'm thinking about going out in the public and doing a sit down thing, because I'm tired of standing in the sun in Texas. So there's like a little gathering every week near my house, and this is probably the camera, not this one, but maybe the previous one that you showed, because I get the sense that one maybe can go on a table. That one I probably end up getting this one, because having one camera that would record them and me and anything happening around me, that's perfect. The only thing is now you're just down to one camera. So if your camera dies on you, then what? You know?
That's true.
So I
yeah,
might
they-
still have one camera in the mix as sort of a wide shot just as a backup.
Yeah,
But yeah, this would be the one that I'd probably end up going with.
that's a good call. Yeah, for sure. You've got one point of failure there, which is never a good idea when you want to film something that might it might be the best, and you know it will fail on the best possible conversation
Yeah.
as well. That's a guarantee. How about you, Reid? This probably doesn't apply so much to your setup, I guess, because you've already got like quite a nice setup there. But like, what do you think about these 360s?
Yeah, I've been using the 360 camera for the past year or so, and it's been
Oh,
there's some trade-offs there. The first trade-off was hard drive space. I used to having to convert it to ProRes, but now that I have a new laptop with a H.265 encoder built in, it's much less hard drive space, the
Awesome.
transcode files, and I can do it faster. I could have done it with the H.265 on my other computer, but it would take like 2 days for all the footage I had.
oh my God.
So now it's less of a bad trade-off. So I'm enjoying it now. But you can't, at least with the GoPros, import them directly into Final Cut. You have to transcode them first, which is a little bit of a pain.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So the footage we're seeing here, is that coming from a 360? That's a photograph, right? That's just coming from a photo camera.
Yeah,
that coming
here's
from-
the 360 camera.
Oh, I see. You got it there.
Using-
Right. Nice. And that's the GoPro, is that? It doesn't look like the GoPro. Is that the older
Yeah,
GoPro?
that's the GoPro.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Okay, cool. And so, yeah, there's one of the potential downsides with these things is that depending on the resolution of the image that the device is coming out with, you can get a slight fisheye effect, which the kind of sort of fishbowl look where the sort of it feels a little bit like it's a security camera perhaps, or like a warped image. And I think that can slightly put people off, but I honestly feel like the benefits outweigh the negatives by a massive margin there. That's awesome. I actually had no idea you were using that, so that's really cool. Yeah, awesome.
Yep.
So I think those are definitely options. The GoPro, the normal GoPros, the sort of standard issue GoPros, have always been an option for a good long time. And I genuinely feel like if you want to do something handheld, like I would go for something like this. This is the DJI Osmo Pocket. These are fantastic little handheld cameras. You kind of hold it just as if it was like a little mobile phone in front of you, and it has a little automatically stabilized gimbal, which just remains completely steady whenever you're moving it around. So you know, if you're walking or moving at all, or you're moving around the person, you want to film something handheld, definitely use something like this. So this little gimbal is going to make sure that footage stays nice and smooth, even if you're moving around quite a lot. And you'll be surprised how much hand holding something will shake the moment you start to look at the footage later. You'll deeply regret how unsteady your hand is. So something like this I think is great, but I actually don't think hand holding is generally an advised strategy, because again, it's just making something very obvious. You don't want to be standing there sort of almost aggressively filming somebody.
Not only that,
that's
though,
great.
like I think it's good to have your hands free for taking notes, or in the rare instance, you know, having your hands free for self-defense, just in case things get out of hand, because you never know. Like I'm not actually joking. Like that's why I really like having the strap. My hands are completely free. So if I need to push somebody out of the way, you know, if somebody comes at me or whatever, you know, I've got my hands free. So of course you could just drop the camera, and it being 360, you'd probably catch the altercation on camera, wouldn't you? After the initial drop. But yeah, I would say like I would say try not to have your hands occupied, because you want to be gesturing and be natural, but also
that was one thing.
Defend yourself.
I recently saw Mark Solomon. That he did a fantastic video. You guys reviewed it on the SE Review Show recently, where he was interviewing. I forget Nancy, I think her name was. It was just a great video, by the way. If you haven't seen it, do go and check out Being Reasonable's channel and check out the video with Nancy. But he's using the GoPro 360 on a tripod, very much in the kind of same direction that I'm going to go with was just having something slightly off to the side and on a tripod or monopod just to the side, so it's not even in between us. So it's a very unintrusive way of recording. And one thing I noticed immediately watching him have this conversation was how much he was moving his hands to express himself and be open and sort of demonstrate his sort of, you know, using his non-phatic communication, non-verbal communication. He's basically sort of more free to sort of disarm people, make them feel more comfortable. Disarm in the sort of the conversational sense, but he's definitely able to express himself more freely. And I think if you were holding onto a clipboard, I think there's a sense to sometimes that the clipboard seems more important than the conversation partner. You know, you're writing down notes, and that seems to be your focus. Whereas it was really interesting seeing how free Mark was, just standing there having this conversation. He was definitely gesturing a lot with his hands, and I just thought that was really good to see. So I'm interested in seeing how these things change the SE game a little bit. That's cool. I did make a note here about multi-camera. Like, so we mentioned that already, like having different angles and having a backup camera for sure is definitely worth having. And pointing out, like, if you have multiple cameras, how important do you think changing in the conversation, other than just shifting backwards and forwards between you and your conversation partner, which your 360 camera would be able to do, how important do you think having different angles to sort of refer to? I can see a timeline has appeared here in the chat. Oh my gracious, this is all your cameras? That's awesome.
Well, with a 360, I get multiple angles. I can create a lot of different angles. Here's my classic, crop 2 angle from the one camera, and then I can switch to like a medium shot, or for the interlocutor, a medium shot. Here's from the cart view. I have another GoPro on the cart, but then I can have an insert of my board from the 360 camera.
From the 360,
yeah. I rarely use this angle. This is the super wide one in case they're doing something with the props on the table. I use that.
Right.
And there's the POV from the table. I've never had that before without the 360 camera. And that's nice to have.
Yeah.
And then I also have this super wide.
I think having the extra cameras, they're really useful because you catch things in the background that are important. So like there have been instances where the cops have showed up and there's activity prior to the cops showing up that my cameras have caught, or I've seen individuals that I interviewed walk by in the background of other interviews that I'm doing, or there's these wonderful moments that you capture if you do have these extra shots. And it's really, if you can do that, I would say do it, because it can add a human dimension to your conversations that just having, just you and your conversation partner may not necessarily catch.
Yeah. If your conversation partner is distracted by something in the background or sees somebody, or, if something happens, and you can provide context to that. Whereas if you've just got these locked in things, it just maybe might look like your conversation partner is distracted for no reason. And you've now got this option to shift the camera around. And yeah, this is great. I hadn't realized. So you've only got the 2 cameras, Reid, is that right?
I have 3 now. One on the table, one on the cart, and one super wide somewhere I put up in a tree or on somewhere random.
Oh, okay, I gotcha. And are they all 360 cameras then?
Only the one on the table is 360.
I
the rest
gotcha.
are
Okay, cool.
GoPros.
Gotcha.
I also have my phone for the stream, so I have a GoPro on my cart and my phone on the cart for the stream.
I've been slightly inspired by David from Sound Epistemology's gratuitous use of drone footage to introduce his videos, and I really like the idea of getting, like, there's the new Mavic 3 from DJI, which is a very, very small, lightweight drone that can do, and I just think that there must be something very lovely about getting that sort of establishing shot of where you're doing the SE, and maybe not have it buzz around you whilst you're actually having the conversation, but just giving a bit of a context to the environment. I think I think it's great.
Should we call this superfluous, though, to actually getting out there and getting conversations
absolutely
done?
required. Don't start with me on this. My wife is exactly the same. This is absolutely necessary. I must have the drone. One of these. I can't. SE cannot be done without one. That's just the. Okay, you're right. Maybe this is all a little, but this is it. It becomes like an escalation thing, and I really do think, like, it's important to recognize organized, you really can just start with your phone. Like, there is absolutely no reason not to start with your phone. Most mobile phones these days have just got absolutely fantastic cameras in them, and their microphones are brilliant, and they're well designed to be in these kind of outdoor situations where you want to be recording and filming something. So they will just be point and shoot. So do not be in it. Yeah, exactly.
Look at that.
Same.
They're incredible. Just make sure you turn off your notifications and your vibrations and
Yes.
everything, because that'll come through. There was
there
was one moment I recorded something on my phone because I had packed all my stuff up, and the videos on my channel, and I kept getting phone calls all during this wonderful interview, and half the comments were complaining about the interrupted interview.
That's awesome. Cool. So that's the multi-camera setup. We've got, use your mobile phone's fine, but do not disturb mode is your guide there for sure. Like, but yeah, the mobile phone cameras are just fantastic. They are really, really getting amazing, and the iPhone 13 is just absolutely ridiculously good. So yeah, don't be afraid just to start out with something super simple like that. So yes, the drone is maybe a bridge too far. I agree. Cool. Let's just talk real quick about other accessories. So I wrote down the appearance of professionalism, good thing or bad thing, right? So there is a sense to which I think if you're dressed in a certain way and present yourself in a certain way, you've got a clipboard in your hands, you've got clearly things with a logo on around you, there's a board up. I think there's a sense that this is an official thing, a sensible, a proper thing, not some strange guy approaching me oddly in a public space. And I think that there's the sense of professionalism and officialness of it can be really helpful to make you maybe not feel threatening to people, that you're legitimately doing something. It's not just you on a whim just sort of going up to somebody. But then I would say the flip side of that might be that the air of professionalism makes you look like you have an agenda. You have a very specific thing. You're funded. You're maybe going out there with a goal in mind, and maybe people are suspicious of what that goal. I mean, people will always be suspicious of what the goal is. But maybe if you've got look like you're more organized, maybe people might be feeling more protective over, sort of understanding, or maybe suspicious of your motives, I should say. So I've been kind of flipping and flopping on this. I really don't. I think as we said earlier, I think it's very much going to depend on the person. But like, what do you guys think? How have you guys thought about this? Have you thought about it, and how have your thoughts on it changed over the years? Reid is looking pensive.
Yeah, I guess I do look more professional nowadays. I do have a little nice graphic sign, and my microphones are there. Those are nice, and all my props and stuff, and like cards. It does look like a whole production, and it catches people's eyes, and it makes it something they want to ask me. What's that? What is this? And when I say it's like a hobby, or it's just me, they're kind of, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I think Reid's setup is really good for getting people's attention and sort of establishing it as like, it's not just this fly by night kind of thing. Like maybe there's some level of effort that was put into this thing. You're communicating that right from the start. But I personally think disheveled and disheveled is better. Like, you're out there, you kind of slap your stuff together, and you went out there and you're kind of doing your damnedest to kind of get a talk in. And and the more polished you are, the more it screams like prepared and agenda and all this other stuff. Yeah. And I think that could get in the way of having a more authentic talk. But I've had great talks at Reid's setup. Right?
Yeah, like, absolutely. I've seen them.
You can overcome those initial impressions is what I'm getting at. Just might take a little bit of an extra effort.
Yeah, I definitely get the impression where people are sitting down at your table, Reid, I get the impression that they're more nervous to start with, for sure. Like, I feel like this is and here's the interesting thing. It doesn't seem to have any impact on your effectiveness as conducting the interview. So maybe this shouldn't be a concern. But they definitely seem more nervous and apprehensive. They're kind of like nervous about talking to the microphone, and now they've got to put some headphones on.
Like,
and they're
I can hear myself like, now. And that's a big professional thing. Yeah.
It just get the sort of impression that sometimes that the slightest wrong move, and they'll just sprint, they'll bolt, they'll just run so far away. But it hasn't. Obviously you're incredibly effective at what these conversations, and so it doesn't seem to change the ability to have the conversation. And I wondered, maybe does it improve it? Like maybe the casual kind of relaxed sort of approach is less effective. I don't know. It's an interesting thought, but I've really got no idea about. I definitely feel like I'm going to be the standing up sort of SE conversation sort of person, but I do like the table approach.
Yeah, I feel like you could ask the "Por qué no los dos?" the "why not both?" thing here, in terms, even if you are just standing there in that more casual setup, a little sign next to you still saying, I'm having these conversations, I'm not selling anything, that sort of thing.
Yes,
that you could incorporate a little from column A, a little from column B here, and I think that's what I would lean more towards. I would try to have at least a sign that's prompting to say, I'm not trying to sell anything, I'm not pitching an idea, I just want to talk to you. But then myself, I think I would, especially initially, be the more standing form, just because that would be so much easier to get off the ground and actually get going. Who knows, it might morph into a table thing later on, but yeah, a little bit of both I think could be good.
I was just laughing. I experimented with stools, so I was trying to sort of do a hybrid between standing and sitting. And I bought these little cheap stools from Target or something and hauled them out there. And I found myself, I didn't like sitting on them, and neither did my conversation partner. Now, maybe they just weren't comfortable stools or something, but that might be another option if you could have some foldable chairs or something where you don't have a table per se, but you're still kind of sitting. And maybe there's a hybrid. There's probably some.
Are we just missing the real goldmine opportunity here of leaning and doing SE? Just leaning casually, just to one side, just against a post, just hack. That's the way.
I've also been adding a bunch of props and little things to play with on my table as well. I've had this little scale now I put on the table, and then I tie their reasons to a certain amount of weight, and then they can weigh their reasons for and against on the scale physically in front of them using a bunch of weights. So I have like magnets for the ones that go on the board and plastic ones that go on the scale to keep it consistent. I've got a whole thing now.
Yeah. I like the idea of visualizing people's thought processes, because like sometimes I think it's easy once they've said something to sort of move on and not really recognize what they've actually expressed, what kind of structure they've put out there. I think sort of letting them see it in front of them forces them to confront it in a way that perhaps just in the conversation, the natural flow of a conversation, sort of things move on and they just don't. So this is great, but how long has it taken you to sort of build up all of these props now? And how much further is it going to go? That's the question.
I don't know. About a year and a half so far. Yeah,
that's awesome. I like the simplicity of them as well. There's something playful and colorful. I think it's good. I really do like them. So that was one thing I was actually going to speak about, which is the nature of the clipboard. Do you guys feel, Anthony, famously, you go out there with the clipboard. Do you find the clipboard? How often do you use the clipboard, and how often are you using it as a genuine like guide to like writing things down and referring back to them, or do you use it more as just a kind of way of making the conversation feel more official? What is your main reason for this sort of clipboard?
The main reason for the whiteboard. So I envision a clipboard being like I'm writing it down, but a whiteboard is more like temporary, I suppose. So the whiteboard that I use is honestly so that I can write down what they're saying and not forget it, because I have a bad memory. My short-term memory is not good. So I'll almost instantly forget their name. So I write their name down, and they might say their main reason. I'll write it down. Or sometimes as they're talking, I think of a question that I want to ask, and I know I'm going to forget it. So I'll write down a trigger word to remind me of the question to ask. So there's a utility to it for myself just to keep up with the conversation. And then what I learned as an aside was that, this actually conveys a certain aura of I want to say authority, but maybe there is a little bit of a degree of that, but like, this guy's out here to do something. That's sort of what you're conveying.
Right.
He's doing something, and it's there was a certain a degree of thought that went into it. I think that's
he's doing this deliberately. He's not just come out here and just on the spur of the moment decided to have this weird conversation with me. It looks like he's come here to do this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's and there's other benefits too. I'm trying to think offhand what it could be. I mean, you could use it as a shield. I feel like I'm just talking. I'm talking about like all the negative attack stuff, but like, you know, if somebody came at you, you could actually raise it up and maybe use it to block a little bit if you had to.
So you guys can tune in next week where Anthony will be demonstrating how to disarm an attacker with a street epistemology puzzle piece, because what you do not know about those things is that in the right hands, those things are lethal. That's what you do.
You can also mount stuff to it. So like I use a magnetic whiteboard, and I have my Tic Tacs with there's a little magnet on the back. So it just pops on there. Because you wouldn't believe how many times I'd put something on it, it'd fall off. And in a couple instances, I've handed my whiteboard to my conversation partner so that they can illustrate something or give me a pie chart. So it's not just something that I have, but you know, I would say my advice would be like, feel free to give the whiteboard to your conversation partner for them to use to illustrate stuff if you need to.
I really resonate with. Oh, sorry, Jake.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I really resonate with what you're saying about the remembering the person's name. Like you will want to remember it, but like you'll realize 3 sentences later you were like, I have no idea what they just said. It just went. I have no idea.
Yeah.
And you really want that to build the rapport, to be able to refer to them by name. I think that's so powerful. And the ability to write down your questions so you don't feel the urgency of interrupting them and asking them in the immediate moment is just so much more liberating. I found that when I'm having conversations with people online, I've taken to just making notes as I go along. And it's mostly just garbage, but it's garbage that reminds me of what I was going to say. Otherwise, I will feel that urge or that pressure to interject it while I remember, and that's not normally always the right place for the conversation. So yeah, I can totally understand its utility there. I definitely think I'll be a clipboarder.
I would highly recommend it. And I've noticed also, maybe pay attention to the videos too. You'll probably notice it. When I start writing something down, they often will watch to see what I'm writing down. And I think in a way, it triggers something in them to say, oh, I must have said something noteworthy there. You know, and I think it might actually in and of itself generate a little reflection on what they just uttered, because it caught my attention, and maybe they start to wonder that they should be noticing as well.
And that's what I was just going to highlight. I remember in some of your older videos, you went back and took the time to look analytically at it, and you mentioned body language things, and you talked about the power of and the grabbing your own chin and these gestures that you were making, but then also referred to the clipboard of multiple things like showing attentiveness. You actually are actively listening, and you hear all those. So it certainly was a prop that you seem to be using very intentionally to send certain messages, whether it be attentiveness or
that stuff evolved though. Like I didn't start off like thinking that was just sort of like, as McRaney likes to say, A/B testing. I would go out there, I'd do this stuff just for my own benefit because I didn't want to forget their name. And then I noticed benefits of doing it. And you're like, oh, this is really a useful implement of doing street SE,
Nice.
Yeah, I like the idea of the attentiveness indicator. I hadn't thought about that as well, but that's great. But I did, because I was reflecting on the idea that if I'd mentioned something and then you started to write it down, I might feel like I was being somehow intimidated by that. Or
sometimes people will stop. So I've had people stop talking because they wanted me to finish writing down. They were being courteous, and I actually threw them off. So you never know how they're going to respond. It could actually detract from your conversation, but it was much more positive than a negative like that.
I feel like Reid's just taking this whole game to like a next level though.
Oh yeah, he's got toys. Yeah.
In addition to my whiteboard, I also have my iPad in front of me. So I've been practicing keeping eye contact with them, but also typing when I'm hearing. And I also type their name immediately at the top.
That's not creepy at all.
That's awesome.
See, I think it actually lightens the mood a little bit, because they're talking and I'm like, I'm actually sort of leaving them alone a little bit, where I feel like I'm backing off in a way to let them express themselves more. So yeah, you kind of have to try. And there's probably some regionality to it too. Like this might work really good in Texas, but be a horrible idea in Boston, in Massachusetts. Who knows?
Yeah. I think that's true of a lot of the components of SE. I think there are definitely going to be regional variations in how this stuff gets approached. I've thought about the iPad versus the clipboard, but I think there's something probably quite useful about the clipboard. I keep saying clipboard, whiteboard. I think that probably the whiteboard has this kind of brilliantly sort of simplistic utility to it, which I think probably, yeah, maybe I'm going to go with the whiteboard. How about you, Joe? Do you think you'll be a whiteboarder, or are you going to be building play sets out of colored blocks? And
I think initially none of that. I'll try to make. I really am interested, yes, to record the conversations, but more so just to have them and have them repeatedly. So I think initially I'll have as few barriers to someone coming up and speaking to me as possible. And then once my own comfort builds, then I could start to think about incorporating those other things. But out of the gate, I'm going to try and keep it as minimalistic as possible, I think, personally.
Yeah, fair enough.
So
there it is.
I got to show. So yeah, so whiteboard clips on. All right, now it's sliding a little bit. Oh, I cleaned it. But check this out on the back. I got this on the back. So there have been times where, like, because I'm such a particular person about noise, there have been times where I'm writing my note and I'll be holding the board off to the side so that people could just like quiet. Double duty.
That's smart. Were you going to jump in there, Reid?
No.
You get. No. I'm wondering how long it's going to be before you've got some kind of interactive display with your Miro board on there, because I know that's what that would make you so happy.
Ooh, that would be awesome.
I have
touch screen interface where it's just this.
And then you can email to them afterwards, and they could be thinking about it.
Oh shit, that would be excellent. Yeah. I think that would be really cool. Cool, awesome. So I did want to touch on streaming next, because this is kind of that's like the next level of, once you, I mean, it's a very different thing, I think, like thinking about how to stream this stuff. Filming it is like one order of magnitude more difficult than just having the conversation. But streaming it is like just an order of magnitude further on from that. So I know like, so Reid, I know you stream like a lot of your interactions at the table. Anthony, you've done some streaming, like you've periscoped, and is that right? Do you stream live to YouTube very often? Have you done that much, or I know it was like Periscope was your thing.
Periscope was pretty much my thing. Yeah, I would have my GoPro on my chest, and then I would tuck my phone in behind the GoPro.
Right.
The problem was it would slip through my phone. It just wasn't really ideal. But it was kind of nice. It was nice live streaming the video. Even though the problem with those, I couldn't see the live comments that were happening. That would have been nice. It would have been nice to see, like on a display or something. Wouldn't it be awesome to be able to see in real time the comments that were coming in, and maybe taking a question from the audience mid conversation?
Yeah.
But like these are added complexities that your average person going out for the first few times doesn't even need to worry about.
Absolutely not. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but
totally.
live streaming was fun. There's a lot of people that stumbled across SE videos just because I happen to be live streaming in that situation was Periscope, but
yeah,
whether it's Twitch or YouTube, you're going to probably find people who just stumble across your channel, have no idea what SE is, and that's their entry point just because you used a platform like that.
Yeah, one thing that's useful to remember is that every video might be somebody's first exposure to these ideas. And one of the things that I tell some of my interview partners when I do my little interviews is that, especially when they're telling things like deconversion stories, I remind, they often will say that this deconversion story is not particularly interesting. It's the same old story. It's the usual. And I always try to remind them, like, don't. Every single time somebody steps up and explains their deconversion story and goes through this journey, it could resonate with the next person. You've no idea how much this stuff can what specific thing it might be about you, and the very subtle thing about your story that really helps it resonate with somebody, enough to make them really reflect on their own positions. And I think that I think the same thing to a certain extent is true with SE. We ought to be a bit more perhaps mindful that everything that we do has the chance, including this stream potentially, has the chance to be somebody's first exposure to street epistemology, and it's one of the reasons why I think sometimes language like SE rather than street epistemology makes it more difficult for people to interact with it. But yeah, I think live streaming is definitely a way of reaching a lot of people potentially.
It's a good way of reaching people, and it's also good for showing people what a typical outing looks like.
Yeah,
warts and all, downtime and all. Because once you get a live stream, you don't usually start and stop live streams as your conversations go. You let it roll. which could be a challenge at the start because you are walking up to somebody as you're live streaming. So I would sometimes put my hand in front of the live stream camera with my GoPro pointing down until I got their permission and everything. But there's something to be said for showing a conversation that didn't go as well, or it was an SE talk, but it was no different than the 30 other talks that you had with somebody about faith or something. You know, it's like, okay, I get a sense of where this is going because they're giving the exact same reasons that last person gave, and he's given the same. So it's a good way to set expectations for somebody getting into SE if you can watch a live stream or hear a live stream of it.
And I just was about to reflect on that personally. From my experience, that was sort of my first exposure was actually Reid's live stream, and funnily enough, I'd just gotten onto the SE Discord, and there were the two links, and me being totally oblivious to all this, I thought I was clicking on the link to just go and watch the stream, but I was actually clicking on the link to participate in it. So here I am chatting, and I'm realizing there's no one else in the chat. I'm like, huh? And then Reid, you said, oh, hi, who are you? And I was like, oh
shit,
I'm Joe, yeah. And then he's like, well, do you want to come on? I was like, oh, really? And then
it's called Birth by Fire right there.
Yeah, and then totally called, and I had a old webcam, and anyway, just made it happen. And Reid was gracious enough to say, hey, come on, and we chatted about it. And I think what you touched on there, Anthony, is really true. It's a really useful tool for people that are more core to the community, the people that are already have a vested interest in SE and seeing how everything's going on. To get that perspective was really useful. And yeah, I've really appreciated that side of Reid's live stream thing, because you see how the day goes and all the rest of it. So
good.
I am starting to think that 25% of the people that appear on Reid's stream have no idea what they were going to end up there. There's quite a few people that just turn up, just want to chat and hang out. Like, what you doing?
Or promote their stuff, right?
Promote their stuff.
Yeah, get their name out there. Robert Hamilton, who is the project manager of the SE course, he was saying he was watching, I think, a live stream. It may have been mine. And one thing that he told me recently is it was neat to see you, Anthony, when you asked somebody if they could stop for a conversation and they said no, and you just went on to the next person and you didn't let it phase you. That, he said, gave him the confidence to actually start a talk in the first place. He did not be discouraged by somebody shooting you down if you do ask them to talk. That's important to show too.
Yeah, this is something I wanted to touch on a little bit later, but yeah, like I think that's critical. One thing Chucky from the SE Review Show said, and I think it was a very good point, is this idea that far too often, it can seem like the videos that are presented on on your SE channel, on your YouTube channel, are only going to be the ones that obviously worked, that were successful, right? You're going to be showing the best of clips, and therefore, how often doesn't it work? How often is it a complete train wreck? So maybe this method is absolutely awful. Maybe this way of having conversations is terrible, but like you just do it so often that you're getting a couple of hits and you're putting them on, and those are the ones that go on your YouTube channel. So seeing it done live, like where you're seeing the fails and the successes, the highs and the lows, the hits and it's I think is a really good way of showing that this is just an honest attempt to have conversations, that it's not like it's not just selection bias in terms of what goes up on the YouTube channel, that actually these conversations, some of them might not be the most interesting conversations. Some of them might just be, you've had 6 of very similar conversations in a row, but that doesn't mean that the method itself isn't great. So I think it's really important actually to do these live streams, because I think it does show something real and honest about the efficacy of the approach. I see Reid's got some more tech to show us. Oh, is this your audio recording? Yeah,
this is the device I use now, Zoom P4, and this one little piece of hardware has made my life so much easier. That little Bluetooth adapter there that plugs into it. I used to have like a much more complicated setup, and I had to unplug stuff when I wanted someone to be on stream to talk to me so it doesn't echo. But with this, it has a mix minus built in, and I can keep it all wireless. Like I just have my phone wirelessly connected to my Zoom mixer there on the table.
Oh,
and
nice.
The stream hears the good audio from the good mics wirelessly, and it's not delayed at all. I don't know how it works. It's amazing.
All right, so you've got like a main setup where you're recording your audio separately. Like you've got your sort of studio with the 2 microphones and everything, all of that's going on. but you've also got an output from that Zoom mic, which is radio transmitted to your phone, and then your phone is handling all of the live streaming component.
Yeah, I just start a StreamYard on the Safari browser on my phone, and it connects to the Zoom mixer like it's, a piece of headphones or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's a microphone and headphones, and it works out really well.
So you can actually hear. Wait, no, you're not hearing anything from the phone, are you? So yeah, it's just.
I am hearing when people come on the stream. I'm hearing audio from the phone StreamYard to the Zoom mixer to my headphones on the table.
That's awesome. That's very cool.
Yeah.
So if somebody said, "Hey, Reid, ask him about that," you'd be able to hear that and then work it in. Decide if you want to work it in or not. That's cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's very cool.
See, I like that interactive part of it, because I think that might help people who they enjoy watching the SE stuff, but this gives them a chance to be a part of it to a certain degree, and maybe get them over that edge to consider doing it.
And sometimes people watch my phone and read the comments as it's going.
Hey, Mark, I gave you a shout out earlier, but yes, Mark's asking how do you power this? So you've definitely, you've got quite a lot of tech out there. So how are you managing power in the world, Reid?
Lots of external batteries.
Yep.
You can see I clamp an external battery here, and I've got an external battery.
Wait a sec. We're not seeing that.
Something like this.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Oh, do you see it now?
Oh, yeah. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, external battery clamped there, so I power my GoPro and my phone. Like, I'm set for power when I go out there for hours. Yeah. I'm fine. I have an external battery to connect to my GoPro, and then an external battery to connect to the Zoom P4 and my iPad. So it's all
of these devices have got their own internal batteries as well, right? So all you're doing is topping up their own internals, and they can stream for a good couple of hours. A lot of these things now without too many issues.
Experiment though first, because I hooked my GoPros up to external batteries, and there was like a clicking noise that started going like every second or something. So before you go out in the field, do a little bit of practice recording.
Mark's asking for what brand of external battery do you use?
I forget. I'll find the link.
I can recommend the Anker. They're an American brand. Anker batteries, and their cables are absolutely phenomenal. So I tend to go for those for power banks and charging stuff. They've been great.
Yeah, I have Anker as well, and even the much older ones I have are still fantastic. So I'm sure their more recent products are even better. But I can vouch for that brand as well.
Sorry, Joe, I was horribly talking over you. It's ANKER, I think. Is that right? Yeah, ANKER. Yeah, they did great power banks. You can also buy like quite large, like portable units that you can literally plug, standard outlets into, and they can do an awful lot of that kind of stuff as well. So if you don't want to have like lots of little batteries, you can carry these little, it'll last 15 hours, of mains like power, and you can just drag one of those out there. But they tend to be incredibly heavy. So
they are, that's what I would do. There's a farmer's market near my house, and that's probably where I'll go to do it, and just plug all my stuff in there. And that thing will last, like you said, it'll last a long time powering your stuff. It's Jackery is the one that I use, or have. I haven't used it yet.
Mophie, yeah, I've seen these guys around. Yeah, that's cool. So that's the one you're using right now, Reid?
Yeah, I've got a couple of those.
Cool, awesome. No worries, Mark. That's awesome. Yeah. So live streaming, I did want to touch very briefly on a couple of things. If you want to do live streaming, there's some software that's fairly ubiquitous in the world. So depending on how you're doing it, so we are using, like I use, and I know Reid, you guys use, and for the SE server we use this StreamYard software, which is a browser-based streaming platform. So StreamYard is basically just a web-based thing. You log in Like you log in, enter, and it just connects to your microphone and your cameras. So we use this for a lot of I'm using it right now. We're using it for this show, but we use it for the SE review shows and things like that. And I know you're using it for your streams. And one of the nice things about this is it allows you to simultaneously stream to multiple platforms at once. So StreamYard's it's a paid solution. It costs. It's not actually tremendously expensive. Actually, it's pretty good. And there are different variations of it. I think Restream.io is another one, and there's a few others coming up that will have slightly different feature sets. But honestly, I found StreamYard really friendly and easy to use. It's been pretty good. Do you guys have any regrets about StreamYard? Would you recommend it?
I love StreamYard. Yeah, it's great. There's also the YouTube app itself. If you just have one angle, you can do that.
Right. Yeah.
I've done that before.
So the other option you can have is this. This is free open source software, OBS Studio. It's super famous. It's the go-to desktop streaming tool. So if you've got like a laptop that you're streaming from, and you've got like stuff going on with multiple cameras, and you've got different scenes, and you want overlays and all this other fancy stuff, the kind of stuff that you would see on most people's live streams with lots of sort of fancy effects and things, that's going to be OBS Studio 9 times out of 10. And OBS Studio is totally free open source software, and it is fantastic. It powers something like 90% of all live streams in the world, and it's totally free and brilliant. So if you guys ever see the Standard Deviation show, which Joe and I do on a Wednesday, the Standard Deviation show, all of that stuff is done through OBS, and it's all done locally. And if you want to invite guests on to have conversations, so if you wanted to invite somebody into your stream in order to have a conversation, do an SE talk, then what you could use, if you didn't want to use StreamYard for that, which makes the process of inviting guests very easy in StreamYard, you can use this tool, which is kind of less well known, and it looks so ugly. But this is actually a totally free platform for inviting people into your stream. So you can use this tool called video.ninja. It's a strange URL, and it totally looks like a dodgy website, but it's really good. And it was created by this one developer who basically set out to try to solve the problem of how to make it easier to bring people into your live streams. And he wanted to make it free. So this system basically works peer-to-peer, which means that there's no server, there's no paid-for service in between these two things. It's called video.ninja. It's very simple. You create a room, you send an invite to people, people join, and then you can actually put them as different cameras in your OBS stream setup. It's a little bit finicky. It takes a bit of getting used to, and if anybody wants any help with any of this, please do feel free to give me a shout, and I'll be more than happy to help explain it, and maybe we'll do a video on it another day. But for example, the Standard Deviation live stream, this is what we use, and it's again totally free software. So we're using StreamYard to do this right now, but we could have actually done this whole stream using the free OBS tool and Video Ninja. So you've got a lot of really good free options available to you there. So yeah, I just wanted to mention those two things because I think they're super important. Cool. Let's go back. Right, are we doing for time? We've got 15 minutes. Oh my God, so many things to talk about. One thing I would like to mention really quickly is editing. Like, how do you guys approach editing? What do you edit out? How do you tend to move the cameras around? What would you? I saw a comment earlier in the chat which I flagged, and it was a while ago, so bear with me while I scroll up. Oh, this is from Dan Art. I like it when SE videos include preliminary conversations with the interlocutor or the conversation partner, as well as show up the setup and the signage, etc. So you get to see the full breadth of it. I definitely think there are two schools of thought. Some people just want to see people get into it, and other people want to see the whole form of it. How do you guys feel about that, and how do you guys approach the editing of your content?
I like capturing the entire thing, like from the very, seconds leading up to me asking them if they can talk, to the seconds after they've walked away and now they're walking up the stairs or something. I like to capture that whole thing, mainly because I want people to see the entire thing.
Context,
but not everyone likes that, and you can add little what are those called, timestamps to your video. That's clickable, and people can go right to the start of the conversation, or jump to the claim, jump to the reason, jump to the method, jump to the puzzle piece, or whatever. So there's ways to make it easier for viewers to do that. I like showing everything with a caveat. Like there are lots of things that I'll edit out. I'll use a jump cut. Like if if I'm, stuttering or something, like I might chop that off so that you get the last thing that they said and you lose the stutter and then you get right to my question, that type of thing.
Right.
Um, so I edit quite a bit. Like I probably make hundreds of minor little edits like that to my video. There's lots of little edits because I want, I'm producing something. But I don't do it to the point where it's distorting what's actually happening. I think. I don't know if those are in conflict with each other. They might be. Is my voice dropping?
Yeah,
sorry.
your video has just been hitching for me. I don't know if it's the same for everybody else.
We've been having internet issues at the house, so it could be related to that. So
no
I
worries.
apologize.
We're mostly
just
good.
edit that out.
Perfect.
So sometimes there's little distractions or things, or a person says they reveal their last. I asked them for. So don't ask for their name. Ask for their first name, right? Because that will save you an editing moment where you have to add a beep or a blur over their face. Because I've had people say, "Well, I've just read their lips and I know what their last name is. It's Gutierrez, obviously." So yeah, you have to there's things that you can do to like minimize the number of edits. But yeah, I'm totally fine jumping around and everything as long as it doesn't distort from the true nature of the conversation. I think you're okay.
Right. How about you, Reid?
Yeah, recently I've been streaming stuff, and then I take clips of the stream, the good audio, and just the wide shot, and post that as just a series of videos on my clips channel. But then if something is really nice, I then do an edit with all the other angles, and I have to transcode the footage and sync all the footage and get everything in the multicam. That usually takes a few hours. But once everything's there in the multicam, I just start when they first come up, and they walk up, and I just edit straight to the end. Like I don't really edit out much of anything. I just maybe add a few titles and an end screen and the intro clip. That's that.
I'm jealous.
Yeah,
that's the advantage of if you do a live stream or you just snip out and you got the whole raw thing and you can just upload it. Sometimes I'd spend 30 or 40 hours editing one video, which sounds insane, but it's like, I wanted to get the exact jump cut and I wanted to crop it just right so that you can see their face when they said that thing. And so, yeah, I probably spent way too much time obsessing over the details that nobody will ever notice but myself. I thought about one day, like showing how I edit a video.
That'd be awesome.
And making a video of me editing a video. I don't know if there's a
good.
Market for that or if there's any interest, but I think maybe there might be some people interested in seeing that.
I think the more behind the curtain people can see, the more I think people will feel like this is a genuine attempt to present honest content. Because I think when people see edits, there's always the suspicion of how much was cut there or what was changed.
Yeah.
And I think I can totally understand. Well, one thing I know from my old podcasting days was early on in podcasting when we were I'd have a group of friends, we would record a podcast for an hour or so, and then I'd want to edit everything. Every time I would say something stupid, I would edit it. Every time there was a weird breath noise or a slight pause, I would edit it. Every time like the conversation went in a boring direction, I would just edit around that. And of course, it meant that the entire conversation was, which was 2 hours, took about 8 hours to edit because I was fanning about with loads of details that aren't important. And the second thing is the conversation always ended up just feeling more artificial as a result. Is possibly I was just being oversensitive to the awareness of these edits, but they were never going to be perfect. And the reality is, I felt it was just better to put it out raw as possible. And as you say, there are definitely things you should edit out, like people accidentally revealing their name and address or something silly, or giving personal information. But aside from that, I would definitely be more inclined to be relaxed about the content of it, but definitely editing for framing. Like, so as you say, like cropping in and getting that nice reaction shot, I think is really valuable. I can totally see that those are the things I think are worth the edits, because they help sell the story of what's going on.
There were many times too where something would come up that was covered in a different interview with somebody, and I was like, oh, that reminds me of the talk that I did with this person, and I might dig up the footage and put that up on the screen with a card or a link on the video so that people can watch that. Because
Yeah.
I was always thinking, like, there's always these there seems to be these relationships, these weird once you do enough conversations, you start noticing these links, and it's like, I want to tie this stuff together. So editing could be really helpful in that regard.
I really want to just check in with you guys because we've only got 5 minutes left, and there's quite a few things I'd like to touch on. We can skip around a little bit, but do you guys have a little extra time? Do you have a hard stop?
I'm good.
We good?
This is the last thing I have to do today, so I'm good.
Yeah, I'm also
Awesome.
free. So
I don't care about you, Jay.
I know. I know.
Sorry, it's just a general ongoing bullying between a Brit and Australian. That's just how it has to be. There's no choices there.
Banter. Banter is compulsory.
Awesome. Exactly. So I did want to talk about software, because one of the things that I think not enough people are aware of, just briefly, is I don't know what you guys use to edit, but I absolutely have fallen in love with DaVinci Resolve, which is this. This is DaVinci Resolve 18. This obviously is just their website. It's not the best visual, but DaVinci Resolve 18 is high quality professional video editing software. It is incredibly powerful. It will do a billion things that you'll never need or want it to do, and it is entirely free. It's not open source, it's a commercial product, but basically Blackmagic, who make very expensive video cameras, will allow you to basically use the software for free. There's a studio version, which even that I think is incredibly affordable. So $295 for the studio version. And the difference between the studio version and the free version is negligible. Like the chances of you needing the studio version features are extremely small. So if you are trying to look at maybe having to get an Adobe Premiere, like an Adobe subscription, or you're thinking about buying Final Cut Pro, which are expensive options. These are expensive pieces of software. I strongly recommend. Not only do I use this because in fact I have actually paid for it, so I actually have the studio version, and I absolutely love this software. I think it's a great editing experience. It's really easy to move around. It's very, very fast. It's incredibly good. And you can use the studio version for absolutely free. There's no ads, there's no nonsense, there's no pop-ups, it is incredibly powerful video editing software. So I thoroughly recommend it. It will do color correction, it will do audio management, it'll do all kinds of filters you can apply there to make the audio sound brilliant. It's got motion graphics designing if you want to do fancy animations. And it's a full editing suite. It is absolutely brilliant. I don't know if you guys have used this, or what is it that you guys tend to use?
I've heard of DaVinci Resolve. I haven't used it much myself. Maybe a little bit for color correcting if I do something more professional. But it's been growing over the years, and it looks really great. I myself use Final Cut Pro.
Right.
I think it's $300 on the Mac App Store, and I've been loving that. It's really good.
Yeah.
Final Cut was too intimidating for me, so I gravitated towards Power Director, which was really like the learning curve was really easy.
Yeah.
And so like if my first videos, all I knew how to do was drop in the video and end it and maybe put some screen on it. And then I just started learning, oh, I could cut it and transition and do this. And oh, I could put a second. So I was just an iterative thing. And I just sort of ran with it. It's really easy to use. And gosh, my suggestion was, if you're really interested in getting into SE and editing the videos, make sure that it has the ability to put a blur over people's faces. Yeah. And that's an extremely tedious process. So like try to avoid it if you can, but if you have that's a great way to salvage an interview and protect somebody's privacy by blurring it or adding some sort of filter on it to distort it a little bit. That would make sure that your editing software can do that.
In DaVinci Resolve, there's a feature called there's a tracking feature built in, so you can actually draw a circle around the person's face, tell it to track that person's face for the entirety of the video, just tell it, and then give it the little thing, and it will.
Power Director has that too, but the second somebody goes like this or they wave their arm in front of their face, it breaks it. So
I would recommend. I think DaVinci Resolve's solution for this has become incredibly powerful over,
I hope
especially
so,
in this most recent
it
iteration.
drives me nuts. Yeah.
I will gush over DaVinci for ages. It's great. But it's also, yeah, it can be very intimidating. I think that's a really good shout. Like a lot of people when they first open these tools, and DaVinci is no less the case here. It is friendly. It is very easy to use, but it can be massively overwhelming. You've got lots of different things that you're never going to need that are available to you that will just be confusing. And actually, it's so easy just to throw in a couple of video clips, do a few cuts, add a bit a sort of shot change here and there, and then click one button and export it all out, and it's very, very fast. And you can do that without needing to deal with all of these other tabs and panels and things. And so, but the intimidation factor is definitely definitely very present with this stuff. And I think I actually might do a video as well about like just how to do like simple edits in DaVinci, because I think because it's free, it's just totally almost a no-brainer.
I think that would be really useful if you could show that. Yeah, a video showing how you edit an SE video would be really useful.
And I think it's an important barrier for entry to remove as well. You don't need to start out with extremely fancy edits. If you really desperately need to, then you can have a shot, reverse shot if you have multiple camera angles. But being intimidated by the software shouldn't be a barrier to producing your first videos that you want to post. And I think if you show a video of the straight basics, that'd be excellent, because it really is that simple to just drag a clip in and get going on a really simple edit. So
100%
noting, I think.
Yeah.
I also love one of the main features of Final Cut is the keyword-based browser system. You can really organize your footage in any way you want, and even pieces of footage. You can have certain keywords for certain things. Like here's like all of my interviews. Here's all of Quinn's, Nathan's interviews, David's. As I'm editing and importing stuff and organizing it, I throw these keywords on. I have like a whole process where I add keywords before I even get to.
Oh, you're way more organized than me. Yeah,
reviewing stuff to shoot.
I usually just build it from scratch. I mean, there are some things that I save, like the little at Magnabosco in the corner, like that's saved. I drop that in there, it's there. The outro, it's there. But this is a step up for sure.
Yeah, I fear if we're not careful, this is going to become a sort of slight Resolve versus Final Cut competition. But I and again, my killer win here is that this is totally free software. So I've got that massively going for me. But actually, everything you just described is also available in DaVinci. So this is the media panel. I don't know if you can see this very well here on this monitor, but there's a media panel here where you can basically collect all your clips. You can tag them, place them in bins, put keywords on them, timestamp the keywords. All of that's available to you. And you've got like this area here where you can take sub clips. So you can basically cut the pieces out of your footage and drop them into the timeline. Then you've got the editing panel where you do your mainline editing. So this is the main editing for the intro video that you guys saw, or part of it. You've got the motion graphics tab, you've got the color correction tools, you've got the audio processing system, which has got some amazing ability to add VST effects in there. So you've got all your noise canceling tools that will be available here. It's got so much under the hood, it's ridiculous. And then the delivery system is fantastic, because one of the things you can do is you can say, hey, I want to put this on YouTube, and you can connect it automatically. And you can say, okay, well, you want to put this on YouTube, and then you can say, okay, just go ahead and upload that for me. And oh, by the way, also, I'm going to tick this box, and it's going to use the timeline markers as chapter markers in my YouTube video, and it will automatically create the chapter markers for you.
That's nice.
It is really neat. I have Final Cut Pro. I have an Adobe full subscription, and I still use the DaVinci Resolve. I think it's just better, in my opinion. And as I say, the studio version is absolutely free. It's just such a no-brainer from my perspective. But yeah, cool, awesome. Sorry to. Also available for Windows, Mac, and Linux. So the same software is available on every platform, which is another big thing, because Final Cut Pro is only available on Mac, and actually the Adobe software that on Mac is just awful. It just never has really worked very well. So yeah, I thoroughly recommend it. As you
There's a good question from Gigi here. I think it would be good to address. It's along this vein, but
that's a great question. Yeah, what do you guys think to that?
It could be.
Video editing a major part
It
of
could
CI/CD
be.
videos?
You can really get wrapped up in the details of the editing. Like I said, like when I first started, I just uploaded it and I was learning the tools as I was editing the videos. And like I didn't even know how to crop. I was taking the video and stretching it and then moving the entire thing. I didn't even know, oh, I could actually crop and zoom in on these things. Like it was just all an iterative process. And you know, it really comes down to how much time you want to put into it. And I had a lot of time to put into it, I guess. And it ended up sort of owning me to a certain degree. I didn't know how to turn it off. You know, you get really wrapped up into the details and you want to get every little piece just right, but try not to get, I guess the more time you're editing, the less conversations you're having.
That's a really good soundbite. I like that. That's definitely something to think about. Like, what is the cost benefit to this? Like, how much am I getting for how much am I putting in? That's a very good, and actually that's a great approach to think about when editing, because a lot of people actually, like as you say, Anthony, they're not going to care about these changes. They're going to watch the video and they're not going to be as invested in these changes, these edits as you are for some reason.
If they even watch the video. Like I listen to a lot of videos. I hardly even watch videos these days. Like, you know, I'm doing stuff around the house and it's just audio. So yeah.
That's another good point. Yeah. Yeah. That's a horror. I don't even want to think about that because I'm exactly the same. I will fuss over little edits and of course nobody's watching. But I think I also think it becomes more addictive as you go along. Like, and the more you become interested in like nice editing, the more you pay attention to these things, the more it becomes I think it's quite fun and addictive. It's quite a fun way of helping the content you've already recorded be at its best when you put it out. So
that's what I want. I want it to look good. So if it shows up on some show or whatever, or review video, like I want to be proud of it, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. So, I want to just move into just sort of finally to sort of round this off. I want to talk about sort of the nature of the conversations on the street, because it is different from having a conversation, I think, that's prearranged or with somebody from the community. And I think it's like really interesting to talk about perhaps for a moment the dynamic differences between the conversations you might have on the street and versus maybe, you know, practicing with family and friends, etc. So one of the key questions I had was like, how do you explain what you're doing to people? Like I've been sort of mentally taking a little audit of all the different ways people explain what they're doing and how they phrase it. And some people are more nervous about it than others, and other people are more abrupt with it. Some people seem to over-explain. Some people I feel are under-explaining. How do you guys address this? Because this seems like a really interesting challenge.
It's a really interesting challenge. I mean, every explanation of what it is I'm doing out there, if you were to snippet just those, I doubt you'd find any that match, because I'm always sort of on the fly. How do I explain this? And I always try to like vary it just a little bit, but over time you sort of become kind of polished explaining. So maybe the first time I did it, it took me 5 minutes to explain what I'm doing. And now maybe it would take me 50 seconds to explain what I'm doing, but I'm still hitting all those little details. That's what you learn is like, you know, you get feedback from people in the comments or your conversation partners themselves who say, well, it would have been nice if you had told me that at the start. And you're like, God, they're right. And then you work that into your intro a little bit. Yeah. So yeah, it just, and you customize it a little bit depending on the situation, right? If it's an older person, I might be a little bit more descriptive. Like, I'm recording this and I've got these cameras over here and, you know, I want to put it on my YouTube channel. And a younger person is usually like more, let's go, let's do this. Come on, you know. Yeah. Awesome. There's some customization.
Sure. Yeah, I think tailoring it to the situation is definitely really important for sure. Reid is the master of the terse introduction. Like it's so low key, so casual.
I know. I'm like Reid, hey, you're leaving out so much. You know, yeah. I feel like I go overboard, but like I feel like I'm doing that because of the feedback that I see in the comments of the video. Like. Right. I'm sometimes paranoid about how I explain what I'm doing, because I feel like so many people are watching what we're doing.
Yeah.
And my content in particular seems to, you know, catch a lot of people's attention. And if I didn't say what we were doing specifically, I feel like I'd be dinged on it. So like I always feel like I'm walking on eggshells with that. I've even had people say, Well, it's obvious that you wanted to talk about that topic because you did it first, and then I'd do it last. And
Yes.
then it's obvious that you wanted to talk about that topic because you mentioned it last. And then if I moved it to the middle, it's obvious that you wanted to talk about that topic because you put it right in the middle and you inflected your voice just a little. Just like, at some point you just kind of have to go with what you think is an honest explanation of what you're doing and not get too wrapped up into the criticisms.
It's really weird that they are very separate considerations. One is making sure that you are having an honest conversation, and an entirely separate thing is making sure you're seen to be having an honest conversation. Those two things I think are very different. Like right. That you're connecting with the person you're speaking to, you're building good rapport, you're kind of using your human interaction skills. You feel that they're on the same page. But if you're being haunted by these ghosts of the people watching you, or conversations past, or criticisms past, or what might appear in the YouTube comments, I think now you're going to have to be presenting this in a much more labored fashion, because not only have you got to convince the person in front of you, you've got to now try and convince all of the other people that might choose to watch this video. And
that's part of it. But there's also, like, I know other people will be watching. Like Joe probably watched these videos, and he's got a library of examples before he goes out and does it. So, always at the back of my mind is like, what do they need to know so that they can do this without, like the first asking for their first name is a really great example. Like, hopefully when Joe goes out, he'll ask them for their first name instead of just their name. Like, I think it's useful to put some thought into what it is you're saying and how people will interpret it. But there is a limit. There's a limit to where it actually interferes with your ability to do what it is you're out there to do.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Joe. I do want to ask. I want to ask Reid his thoughts on this, but I do wanted to explore this just a tiny little bit further, because it's a really interesting point. Is it even possible to ask a question that is free of criticism at all? Because you could say, oh, asking your first name is a great introductory question, and I can hear in the back of my mind, I'm hearing somebody say, I see, you get their first name and then they feel committed to the conversation. This is part of the mechanism of the trap. Right. Okay, well, what do we say? Hey, you, or now you're being aggressive and making them feel intimidated. That's part of the trap too. I don't feel like there's almost anything you can say that would be beyond criticism in this space. And I guess trying is going to be maybe a fool's errand.
Yeah, you've seen my live streams. Like, I'm very much letting them opt in. It's so much so that I don't even look at anybody. I'm just there browsing Twitter on my iPad for hours on end, waiting for someone to sit down. Like, I will go back for it because it's also like I'm very introverted and even shy, and I hate busking. Like, I hate attempting to get people to see me and sit down. Like, I'll just wait. I have a sign. That's enough. I have topics. If people want to sit down, they'll sit down, and that's a big opt-in.
Yeah, but sometimes you'll sit out there for 3 hours. But you'll be out there for 3 hours and maybe get 3 talks. Whereas I can have, I don't know, maybe 15 talks in 3 hours. Yeah. So, but it's what you're comfortable with. If you're not comfortable flagging people down and explaining what you're doing, then you don't have to do it. Just do what you're comfortable with. Yeah.
And that's what I was going to say. Like, you could have an elevator pitch worked out in terms of what you're going to prompt the conversation to be about, but there needs to be room for that to change, because it's going to feel more organic then. And I feel like when you engage with people, you immediately get a feeling for these people, and you adjust how you speak and your body language, your tone and everything. And same probably goes for the pitch. And I think if you allow for that space to be organic on each interaction, you're going to get better interactions than if you.
I think so. Yeah, that's why I try to alter it every time. I don't think there's one that's exactly the same. I do try to make it unique.
There's definitely a danger that if you rehearse it too well, it's going to sound like a sales patter. Like, you just get the used car salesman coming up to you and just giving you the spiel, and you just know they've said that 1,000 times already that day, and it's just getting less and less emotionally honest as it goes through the day. And I think I think maybe being too polished in that regard might come across as disingenuous. Like, you're not really engaging with the conversation. You're just giving them the spiel and seeing if they stick around. And I think that would be really bad, because a huge part of that early conversation is about making a human connection with the person you're talking to, making them sure that they know you're not selling something, which is of course part of perhaps the sales pitch somewhat. You want to make sure that they know that you're not selling something, that you're not pushing something, that you don't have a specific agenda about what they should talk about and where you want the conversation to go. But you can't open with that. Like, if anybody comes up to you and says, I'm not selling something, what's the first thing you suspect? Okay, you are definitely selling something. That's the only thing I know about you, is you're definitely selling something to me.
Some guy, there was this one guy, I think his name was Danny. I think it was the first interview we did. He said, like, so you're out here with an agenda. And I think I said something like, well, I guess we all have an agenda to some degree. And it sort of ended up breaking the ice. And then he came back for a second talk, so
that's cool.
Yeah. Just mix it up. Try to. I try to approach it like an SE conversation. You're kind of going, even though you're out there and you want to do an interview, you kind of have to be. You need to be fluid. Try to adjust it for the situation that you're in.
I think that's also really important. I should correct that because I think we do have an agenda. Like, going out and doing these conversations, of course you have an agenda. You have a reason why you're going out there and doing this. There's nothing wrong with having an agenda. The problem is just that the agenda they're likely to suspect you of is not the agenda that you have, and that's what you need to disarm. So yeah, it's the idea that you're pushing a particular position, or that you're essentially going out there and selling them something, or trying to get them to sign up to something.
They think you're messaging something where we're doing the exact opposite.
Right.
So there's hurdles you have to overcome right from the very start. And that these are hurdles that you need to overcome. So you try to hit those points,
Yeah.
And yeah, a lot of people being in Texas, if you're out there, in public wanting to talk to people, they usually assume you're religious.
Yeah.
So sometimes they say, like, I get the feeling that this is going to be about God. And I said, well, it could be. And if you want to know my position on that topic, we can, you got to go where you just have to play off of them, whatever they say, try to be honest and sort of, see if they'll be willing to have a conversation with you about a specific topic.
Be present in that moment. Yeah, for sure. I think that's super important. I just want to remind myself as much as anything else to think about this, because I think a lot of the time, because we don't have the agenda we're suspected of, I think there is a tendency to say that we don't have an agenda, and that is actually wrong. We do have an agenda, and it's okay that we've got an agenda. We're going out there for a reason, and I need to remind myself of that, because I will end up saying, hey, no, there's no agenda here, but that's not true. And I think it's a fair call to say that we do.
Yep.
So so talking about, like, one of the components of sort of introducing the subject is also the tricky topic of introducing what the claim might be. Excuse me. So I feel like this is a huge area where we can end up, like, either walking into bias or essentially fishing for specific conversations that we might be wanting to have. So how do you guys approach this? I know you got the board, Reid. You've got the board with sort of multiple things that you're interested in talking about that day. So as examples, how do you frame those claims on the board, for example?
How do I frame them? Sometimes I have actual, direct yes or no questions. Sometimes I just have one word or a phrase, and then I let people pick either one of those or anything they want to talk about, and we just kind of
do you believe in
around
flat Earth, or is the flat Earth real, or something like that?
I don't think I've had that specific one, but basically like that, yeah.
Okay.
Is something real? Should
The vaccines work?
do X?
Yeah. But even those are framed kind of, that seems like a fairly neutral framing, but I'm sure some people would say it wasn't. But that seems like it's a neutral framing, as in you're not saying whether you do or not. You're just asking people to come and say whether they think they are or not, and that would be, that would be a fair way of, I think, exploring it. I can't see why people might feel that that's agendaed, but I suspect people might. How about yourself, Anthony? How do you tend to sort of, how do you feel like you would do now, going back out and sort of raising the issue of what kind of claim people might want to explore?
I think today I would, and I think I've done it in the past, I would talk about broad categories. So, like, rather than saying we can talk about karma, or God, you might say we can discuss a supernatural claim that you might think is true, or a social issue, or maybe something political, or perhaps a personal preference or a moral claim. So you're talking about broad categories and then not anything specific. And then that really opens it up. So that you've met the mark of explaining that I need a claim, but without giving a specific one. You're giving them like a platter of things to choose from.
I think it's also important to get to a claim that people feel like is important to them. I think I've used the expression before that like that you would act differently in the world were this claim not to be, were you to believe differently about this claim.
Yeah. And I started adding that, like, ideally, this is something that affects how you behave, because if I didn't include that wording, then they would pick the most benign, boring, vanilla topic that I personally had no interest in spending 10 minutes talking about.
Yeah.
And once you add on that impacts how you behave in the world to the claim selection, now you're talking about something, because that's what SE is about. It's about talking about those difficult topics that are important to us, that impact how we interact with society and others. So that's a really big thing. Yeah,
I know Janos is on his board that he's gone out with in the past, has expressed this idea that he puts the positive and the negative version of the claim, that the flat earth is true, the flat earth is not true, and he'll literally sort of walk it through in those steps. And you know, do you want to make any of these claims or claims like them or something like that? And I think that's actually quite neat, that you're showing that you're willing to talk to both sides of that argument. And I think that's kind of a neat approach to it if you wanted to be explicit about claims. Are there some claims that you guys would feel, other than just sort of, if somebody did come up to you with a claim that wasn't meaningful or impactful, would you have a conversation with them anyway if they wanted to explore it? Would you go through the motions?
I still do.
Sort of, yeah.
The student that I ended up talking about antinatalism on my channel, I don't remember her name, but she came up for the 4th time, and that was the topic she wanted to talk about. And every claim prior to that was something like, I want to talk about how water has 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom. And we did. And I was grateful that my timer went off after 5 or 7 minutes, because I had absolutely no interest in exploring it, because, you know, that stuff's boring to me.
Yeah.
But we eventually settled on a really fun conversation. Yeah, it was good.
I've also been asking for claims on my Instagram live story and on Twitter. And sometimes I get stuff like this, and I put their, whoever gave me the topic, I put that on the Post-it note. That was fun.
That's cool.
That's
yeah.
cool. I like that. That's awesome.
One thing Dali was talking about in the call-in show the other day, which I thought was really interesting, was this idea that maybe exploring a benign claim, a claim that doesn't really have much impact on the person's worldview, might allow them to feel more comfortable with the process and the method, such that they might be then more comfortable exploring something more meaningful.
That's a good point. Like this student, maybe she wouldn't have started with the antinatalism one. She needed to get comfortable knowing how I would react on the safer topics before she would surface that one, possibly.
Yeah. Testing the waters, to see.
Yeah. And it should be noted, like the claim really isn't even important when you do SE. Like it is maybe for like video views and talking about like I was out there and Kobe Bryant crashed in the helicopter or whatever. And that day I went out, and I wanted to talk about how confident are you that Kobe Bryant was killed or something? Yeah. So you can talk about timely things, but the claim doesn't matter. It could be useful for views and getting eyeballs on your content, but remember, it's like it's how they're in SE. It's how they're assessing the quality of the reasons and the methodology they're using. Right. So claim is not even important, but it's the hook to kind of get people's attention, I suppose.
Right.
And that's one thing that in one of my first SE conversations, one thing that I actually tried to reinforce to the person that I was speaking to was that we were having trouble nailing down a claim. And, I said, the claim is sort of essential to get the ball rolling. But once we start the conversation, the focus of SE, the claim is now irrelevant as soon as the conversation starts, right?
Yeah.
It moves into then the reasoning. So it's like this, it's like the door, and the door is open, you've walked through it, and then it's now irrelevant, or however whatever metaphor fits. But once the conversation starts, the claim more or less becomes relevant.
I think that stymies some people. Reasons. I think some people get stymied, like they're like, oh, but I need a claim to get the conversation going. No, you don't. Like just talk. Well, okay, since we can't find a claim to really talk about, let's have a broader discussion about what it means to have good evidence. Or what do you think about tests? Like what's a good thing to have in a test? You can talk about the broader things that tend to come up later in the conversation, the important things that tend to come up later in the conversation in a broader way. And
Yeah.
what tends to happen is then they start bringing up a claim to explain how they think about those things. And suddenly you have a wonderful claim. And you've backed into it, essentially.
I definitely wonder with the person that was wanting to talk about the nature of water. I still think that there's a conversation there, that you could have about like arguments from authority, like why do you believe science? The positive case is just as useful sometimes to explore as the negative case. So why are you so confident that? Have you ever seen a hydrogen atom? Have you ever
Are you taking it on faith? Is faith somehow involved here in this in this calculus? Yeah, yeah.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And what makes you so confident that this is okay? Yeah. I don't think there are. I mean, there are claims that you personally could be more or less interested in. And I think the really boring ones for me are the grandstanding ones where the person is not really even engaging in the conversation, that they are, for the most part, I think, just using you as a person to evangelize to or speak to. And you get the sense that they're not really participating in a back and forth, that they are literally just broadcasting to you. They're just on message delivery mode.
Those are annoying, but they don't tend to happen when I go out in public with strangers. That hardly ever happens.
Right.
They're not.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah, but like on the online and the practice sessions, or when people know that they're engaging in an SE conversation, I think there maybe is more of a tendency like, oh, this is an opportunity to push my pet topic, and yeah, that's kind of infuriating, because you want to explore it honestly and see if they can reflect on it and not listen to a sermon.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Dallas got a good one there.
How about what was the thing you most recently changed your mind about? That's cool. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great introduction question. I love that. Also, by the way, I just want to call out really quickly this one. I think that's a great comment. Thank you, Biggie. Really appreciate you. Yes, Joe is hungover.
Whose voice?
Joe.
Will thinks it's the hangover, but it's literally, I haven't changed anything in the software or my recording setup, whatever. And between shutting the computer down yesterday and waking up today, my voice is like significantly deeper in pitch, so I don't know what's happened, but yeah, there's some software stuff going on making my voice sound low.
It was such a wild night you hit puberty. That's how you maybe that's what's happened. There are
laughing.
Definitely there are a few things I just wanted to catch up on real quick then. Just are there any in the conversation partner and the people you're speaking to, is there anything you look to avoid? I definitely feel like there's some intuitively sensible things to avoid.
Topics?
But is anything? No, as in the people themselves. So for example, I think anybody that looks like they are drunk or compromised on drugs in some way, for example, might be somebody you'd avoid. I think we talked about groups of people, for example, like it would seem less viable to have a conversation with a single individual if they've arrived with a group, perhaps. I know John from Quality Questions was talking about people with dogs he tries to avoid, but then famously did an interview with a chap with a dog who the dog would just not stop barking at him. The dog had been brilliantly trained to apparently attack people challenging epistemology of the owner. Very strange.
People with kids comes to mind. Because I don't want the kids on the film, and I know I'm gonna have to edit it and put a blur on them. So like that's right. Off my table. There was one lady, she had 4 or 5 kids with her, and what are you doing out here? And she seemed pretty insistent on doing an interview, I think, but her kids were around, and it was like that was an editing nightmare.
Right. Yeah. And they're so distracting.
People who are in a rush, because ideally we're looking for reflection. So if they're distracted, if they're stressed, if they're wary, if you haven't established that rapport and trust, then the conversation's not going to go well.
For sure.
And there's so many factors even before they get to you that could be influencing that. You kind of have to suss that out.
Yeah.
So, pay attention to what they're saying, how they're reacting, if they have time.
How about you, Reid? Anybody specifically you'd avoid?
Someone who's just merely trying to troll me. If they have someone else filming off the side, they're just trolling me. Sometimes it happens in the influencer Runyon Canyon zone. Sometimes it happens. Just people who are not mentally unwell people. Sometimes it happens in LA. So yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. How about age? Like, how young do you ask if people look young? Do you check in with their age? Like, how young do you think would be too young? I know Reid brilliantly. I really enjoyed the the young lad with the parents there. And I had a great conversation with Reid. How young do you think in the street specifically when you're talking to strangers? How young do you think would be too young would you feel uncomfortable interacting with?
That's a good question. Maybe 15 to 16 is probably my cutoff.
Yeah.
Like if they're driving a vehicle, then they're probably okay having a conversation about why they think something is true. That's
Yeah.
but that's not always a given. There was an instance where some kid jogged off the trail, asked what I was doing. 5 minutes later, I'm interviewing him. 10 minutes after, his mom came off the trail. What are you doing? Why are you recording my son? And that was a very awkward situation. So yeah, that's my cutoff. That's my cutoff. It was like maybe 15, 16, but it's not a given that you still have their parents' permission to do that even at that age.
Yeah.
With the obvious permission from the parents, maybe like 10, 12 years old, around there. Like sometimes they can't even focus on something if they're too young, you know.
Oh, right. They don't understand the words you're using. Evidence? Like what? A test? I don't know what a test is. Yeah.
Interlocutor? What are you talking about?
Right. But we should make a distinction. Like that's like on the street interviews. Like if you are an aunt or uncle, you know, to a kid and the parents are there and they know that you ask these types of questions, you're probably in good shape.
We had Lisa, Unruly Lucy, on a couple of weeks ago now, and we talked about this whole idea of like doing street epistemology with kids, and I just think that's such an amazing idea. Like I like whatever the form of that is, like the simplified, refined version of whatever SE becomes, that you can sell it to children and get them to understand the ideas and experiment and get them to do conversations with each other. Amazing. I'm all for that.
Can you imagine like 15, 16-year-olds putting a YouTube channel out where they're doing SE? Oh, please make that show. Please make
I was thinking even younger. Like I think you know, you could explore this with a 6-year-old. Like you could maybe get a 6-year-old to understand like how to ask. We were talking about different ways of framing it, like helpful questions, or question questing was something that was suggested by chat. So you could explain to the kid that asking questions is a better way to challenge something than to just say no, you know, or just deny it, or just be angry at the person. Like how could you ask questions? And I think actually when you really boil down SE, I think the simple components of SE, I really do think you could simplify it enough to present it to children in that way. And I would be all for doing SE with kids in that way, and getting them to do SE with each other. I think there's a whole load of questions here, but honestly, we'll be here all night if we try and move through this list of questions, and we've already overrun by a fair margin on the old time frame here. I would love to catch up again, guys, but honestly, thank you. I think this is probably a good place to pull it over and park it for the time being, if that's okay with you guys. I don't know if Reid personally is really alarmed. Oh no, he's blinked. I thought you'd frozen then for a moment. I did want to. There's some stuff about talking about YouTube and like the nature of starting a YouTube channel that I was going to talk about. But we could probably save that for another time. I think it was just a really great conversation. I really hope it's helped people out there feel that they can do this and get started. And I think. Like don't let the tech and the tools and all of this the complexity put you off. Just go out there with your phone and upload a video. Just do it privately, and then share it with a few friends and share, or maybe share it on the SE Discord server and just see what people think. And like I'm sure you'll get some really great feedback. So even if that video doesn't go on your channel, maybe you'll get some great feedback to make sure that the next one's more likely to. Oh, I see Reid's got something to share.
Yes, we've also switched over from our usual Google form for the practitioner funding request stuff to this Asana form, so it goes straight into our task management system we have at the SEI. So we'll have a link to this very soon on the website, so be on the lookout for that.
Does it still link to the old form? Can people still submit a funding request to the old form or no? Yeah, I think so.
I think so.
It's still out there. Yeah. This is probably a good time to mention, too, that SEI, Street Epistemology International, just formed its first committee, and it's an SE practitioner committee, and it's being led by Mark Solomon. We haven't public. I guess this is the public announcement, but I'll be putting that in my update here that I still need to write. We just had our last board meeting. We brought him in. And so we'll have somebody who goes out and does SE and does a podcast who will be leading a group of people who wants to, Joe, like yourself or anybody else who wants to get into doing SE in public. There will be a regular get together where we can give you resources and you can talk to other people who do it. And I think it's going to be a really good way of getting people over that learning curve, that hump of, of insecurity of getting started. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. That's awesome. I really, that sounds amazing. I am genuinely angry. I didn't know that you were going to say that, because I don't think I'm going to get many chances to need a breaking news banner on this channel. And I had one just then and I didn't have one, and I just felt awful about it. This whole video is ruined for me. Just really quickly, the SE practitioner form. So that's for people that are interested in getting started, that want to request some funding to help them maybe buy some equipment. Whether it's, I mean, how much funding can they request? I mean, what is available to people? Do they make a pitch? Do they just explain what they want to do and ask for help and see what you guys do? Is that how that works?
There's a form that kind of explains. We ask you some questions. What are you wanting to do? How much do you need? What would you use it for? How often would you be producing content? You don't necessarily have to be an SE content creator in order to fill out the request form. If you want to give a talk or go to a conference or something along those lines, this is funding to help people, defray some of the expenses of practicing and promoting SE publicly. And yeah, I mean, the form is pretty self-explanatory. We look at each individual request. Actually, that will be one of the functions that the new practitioner committee will do. They'll take that responsibility off of SEI and talk with the person, figure out what it is they actually want to do and how much,
That's awesome.
what equipment they need. There'll be a monitoring component too. So if we buy you a laptop, we'll check in occasionally to see that you are actually using the money wisely. Yeah,
it's not on eBay.
But it's good. It's something that I wish I had when I first started going out. I would have loved to have had a regular meeting with people that go out and do SE to talk about these things and to have the funds to defray some of the costs.
Some of this stuff can be expensive, and there are some really great people out there that have just got absolutely the right idea and the right personality, and that would be great representatives. And if it's for the sake of just not being able to get a camera and a microphone to them in some way, that they can get out there and start making these videos, I think that is just amazing. So that's awesome, guys. Love that. Awesome. As always, there's so much we could talk about, but I think as I say, we can pull it over for the time being. Does anybody else have anything they wanted to add before we wrap this one up?
No, I just think it was a useful conversation. I am considering doing this myself, and yeah, it's been good to hear you get the advice that's been happening. And I think what I might do, as I need to first approach the municipality, and that I'm just going to document the process from the beginning of the few hurdles that I think I need to get over to do it where I am, and then maybe even document the first time I go out to get the conversations as well. See that initial dive into the water, and maybe that'll be useful for people. But yeah,
I think that people would love to see that. Yeah, warts and all. Great.
I think that's a really great point, because I think so many people are waiting till they look like it's professional, it's slick, everything's all sorted, and people actually, I think, really want to see you grow. When people are watching a channel and they want to watch you grow as a channel. So if your first video is super janky and it's just filmed on your phone and it wasn't pointing in the right direction the whole time, that's great, because then your next one will be a little bit better, and then your audience can see you get better every single time. And then I think your sense of growing and your community gets to see you grow. I think they'll start to support you. And the SE community is genuinely lovely. They're really great at supporting each other and helping people, giving great feedback. I mean, I just get lovely. I mean, I'm sure this is a function of me being tiny, but I just get such lovely comments from the SE community on my YouTube videos. I've got a completely disproportionately pleasant view of what YouTube comments are because of the SE community, and I'm sure at some point, if I start to grow any further, it'll start to become the less ideal space that I hear it can be. But honestly, the SE community is hugely supportive and friendly. So yeah, just don't be afraid to start small and grow, for sure. Guys, thank you so much for doing this. It's been awesome. Anthony, obviously your YouTube channel, just type in, I think, street epistemology, and it probably comes up. It's one of the first things. I
don't have that much content, any new content lately. I've just been so busy with the SEI stuff and the course and other things. There's a really exciting announcement possibly coming up. There's a big event coming up in September that I'm eager to tell everybody about. Awesome. But yeah, I think I might go out there and start recording a few more talks, maybe with some of this equipment that we talked about today. So we'll see.
Yeah, that'd be great. It would be great to see how it's involved. And Reid, Cordial Curiosity as ever, and your second channel is Cordial Curiosity Clips. Is that right?
That's right.
Awesome. Yeah. And what, have you got any new videos coming up? Anything new coming out soon?
Potentially. I think I will be going out maybe in 2 weeks. So I'll be back doing streams.
Awesome.
And more stuff like that. Yeah.
Fantastic. And Joe, when are we going to see your first forays into the wilds of Canada doing SE?
Well, I'm going to be back and forth in 2 different locations this summer, so it's going to be interesting. But it'd be complex where I am here, but the other place interesting where I'm going, it won't be complex at all. So I'm now thinking maybe I could shift into doing it there when I'm away working, but we'll see. Hopefully soon. Yeah. Who knows?
Looking forward to it for sure. And anybody that's watching my channel, I had an interview with a chap called Jonathan, which was really interesting. And we've got a follow-up video that's coming out, which will come out hopefully in the next couple of days. And then there's going to be a third video in that series where we continue our conversation. So if you fancy something a little bit more long form, do check those out. Inspire Reflection. You're already on the channel, so I don't need to tell you where it is. All right, guys. Well, listen, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I've really appreciated it. I hope everybody in chat's had a great time, and I really appreciate you guys being here too. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, we will punch it out with the outro music. But yeah, until next time, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.